The woman I loved was driving away forever, and I'd never even told her the truth. Daniel Hayes stood frozen in his driveway, watching the moving truck disappear around the corner. Victoria Langford, the brilliant CEO who'd become his closest friend, was leaving. Not because of a job, not because of the city, but because loving him from next door had become unbearable. And he'd been too blind, too afraid, too broken from his past to see what was right in front of him until it was too late. If you want to know how a single father and a secret CEO found love in the most unexpected place, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The August heat pressed down on the Chicago suburbs like a weight Daniel Hayes couldn't shake. He stood in the driveway of his new house, a modest two-story colonial with faded blue shutters, watching the moving truck pull away. The diesel engine rumbled into the distance, leaving behind only silence and the overwhelming reality of what his life had become. 33 years old, divorced, single father. The words felt foreign in his mind, like someone else's story he'd accidentally stepped into. "Daddy, can I go see the backyard?" Daniel turned to find his daughter Lily standing in the doorway, her blonde pigtails slightly askew, clutching the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 2. At 6 years old, she still believed the world was fundamentally good, that moving to a new house was an adventure, that mommy and daddy not living together anymore was just how things are now, that everything would somehow be okay. He envied that innocence. "Sure, sweetheart," Daniel said, managing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just stay where I can see you, all right?" Lily bounded off with the boundless energy only children possessed, disappearing around the side of the house. Daniel exhaled slowly, running a hand through his dark hair, already damp with sweat. The neighborhood stretched out before him. Neat lawns, tree-lined streets, the kind of place where people actually knew their neighbors' names. It was exactly what he'd been looking for. Quiet, safe. Far enough from the city to feel like a fresh start, but close enough that his electrician work wouldn't dry up. A fresh start. That's what his lawyer had called it during the final divorce proceedings. "You're young, Daniel. You'll rebuild." But standing there, surrounded by cardboard boxes and the scattered pieces of a life that had fallen apart, rebuilding felt like an impossible task. The sound of a car door closing pulled him from his thoughts. Daniel glanced toward the house next door, a beautiful brick two-story with a meticulously maintained garden that put every other lawn on the street to shame. A woman had just stepped out of a sleek black sedan, dressed in a charcoal gray suit that screamed corporate success. She moved with the kind of quiet confidence Daniel had rarely seen, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, a leather bag slung over one shoulder. She looked up, caught him staring, and offered a polite nod. Daniel nodded back, suddenly conscious of his worn jeans and sweaty t-shirt. Great first impression, he thought. The woman retrieved a small box from her trunk, balanced it carefully, and headed toward her front door. She moved quickly, efficiently, like someone who didn't waste time on unnecessary interactions. The door closed behind her with a soft click. "Daddy, there's a swing set back here." Daniel turned his attention back to Lily, grateful for the distraction. The afternoon dissolved into the chaos of unpacking, finding which box held the kitchen utensils, setting up Lily's room first so she'd have somewhere familiar to sleep, hunting down the coffee maker because tomorrow morning would be impossible without caffeine. By the time darkness fell, Daniel's body ached in ways he'd forgotten were possible. He collapsed onto the couch, one of the few pieces of furniture he'd kept from the old house, and stared at the ceiling. Lily was already asleep upstairs, exhausted from exploring every corner of their new home. This is it, he thought. This is the life now. No wife to share the quiet evenings with. No partner to help navigate the impossible balance of work and parenting. Just him, Lily, and whatever he could build from the wreckage. Daniel closed his eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, his mind drifted back to how everything had unraveled with Sarah. The fights that started small and grew into chasms, the accusations, the lawyer meetings, the moment she'd admitted she'd been seeing someone else for months, the way she'd looked at him when she said she wanted full custody, like he was just an obstacle to overcome. He'd fought for Lily, fought harder than he'd fought for anything in his life. And somehow, miraculously, the judge had seen through Sarah's performance, had recognized that Daniel was the stable parent, the one who showed up, the one who actually put their daughter first. But winning custody didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of routine. Daniel would wake at 6, make breakfast while Lily got dressed, pack her lunch with the kind of care that felt like a small rebellion against the chaos. Perfectly cut sandwiches, apple slices, a juice box, and a note that said, "Love you, Lily Bean." He'd drop her at school, spend the day rewiring old houses or installing ceiling fans for clients who'd found him through word-of-mouth recommendations, then pick Lily up and navigate the afternoon minefield of homework, dinner, bath time, and bedtime stories. Romance wasn't even a blip on his radar. The idea of opening himself up to another person, risking that kind of pain again, it felt absurd. But life has a way of sneaking up on you when you're not paying attention. It was a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after the move, when Daniel first spoke to his neighbor. He'd just returned from dropping Lily at school and was halfway to his truck when he noticed the woman from next door struggling with an enormous crate in her driveway. She'd managed to get it out of her trunk, but was clearly trying to figure out how to carry it to her front door without dropping it. Daniel hesitated. He wasn't great at small talk, especially with people who looked like they had their lives together, but the crate was tipping dangerously to one side. "Need a hand?" The woman looked up, surprised. Up close, Daniel could see she was probably in her early 30s, with striking green eyes and the kind of composure that suggested she was used to solving problems on her own. She glanced at the crate, then back at him. "Actually, yes. That would be helpful. Thank you." Daniel crossed the small strip of grass separating their properties and grabbed one end of the crate. It was heavier than it looked, packed with what felt like hundreds of books. "Moving library?" he asked as they maneuvered it toward her porch. "Something like that," she said, a hint of amusement in her voice. "I ordered too many books and convinced myself I'd read them all. Classic mistake." They set the crate down by her front door. She straightened, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and extended her hand. "Victoria Langford." "Daniel Hayes." He shook her hand, noting the firm grip. "I moved in a few weeks ago. My daughter and I." "I noticed," Victoria said. "I heard her laughing in the backyard. It's nice. This street's been quiet for a while." There was something in the way she said it, a wistfulness that suggested she knew what silence felt like when it went on too long. "Well, quiet might be over now," Daniel said with a slight smile. 6-year-olds aren't known for their volume control." Victoria laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise even her. "I think I can handle it." An awkward pause settled between them, the kind that happens when two strangers realize they've run out of small talk but aren't quite ready to walk away. "Thanks for the help," Victoria said finally. "Any time." Daniel headed back to his truck, feeling oddly lighter than he had in weeks. It was a small interaction, meaningless in the grand scheme of things. But there was something about Victoria's presence, calm, self-assured, unpretentious, that had made him feel a little less alone. He didn't think much of it at the time. Over the next few weeks, those small interactions began to multiply. Daniel would see Victoria in the mornings when he took out the trash, and they'd exchange polite greetings. Sometimes she'd be in her garden, tending to the roses that lined her front walk, and they'd chat briefly about the weather or the neighborhood. Once, Lily's ball rolled into Victoria's yard, and when Daniel went to retrieve it, Victoria invited Lily to pick flowers for her room. Lily had come back with a fistful of daisies and wouldn't stop talking about the pretty lady next door for the rest of the evening. "She said I could come back any time, Daddy. Can I visit her again?" "We'll see, sweetheart." But something about the way Victoria had looked at Lily, with genuine warmth, not the strained politeness some people offered children, stuck with Daniel. Most of the neighbors were friendly enough, but they kept their distance. Victoria didn't. It was a Saturday morning in late September when the dynamic shifted again. Daniel was on his porch, fixing a broken step, when Victoria appeared at the property line holding 2 cups of coffee. "Peace offering," she said, holding one out. "Your porch faces east. I thought you might appreciate this." Daniel set down his hammer and accepted the cup, caught off guard by the gesture. "You didn't have to do that." "I know." Victoria settled onto the top step of his porch, cradling her own cup. "But I made too much, and drinking alone feels depressing on a Saturday morning." Daniel sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. The coffee was perfect, strong, with just a hint of cream. "So," Victoria said after a moment, Electrician, right? I saw your truck. Yeah, Hayes Electric. Not the most creative name, but it does the job. He took a sip. What about you? I see you leave early most mornings in the suit. Victoria's expression flickered, something almost guarded crossing her features before she smoothed it away. I work in tech, downtown. It's demanding, but I like it. Tech, Daniel repeated. That's intentionally vague. She smiled into her coffee. Maybe a little. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the neighborhood wake up. Mr. Peterson across the street was washing his car. The Ramirez kids were riding bikes in circles on the sidewalk. Normal, quiet, suburban life. Can I ask you something? Victoria said. Sure. What made you move here? To this neighborhood specifically. Daniel considered his answer carefully. He didn't know Victoria well enough to unload the whole truth, but something about the way she asked, genuinely curious, not prying, made him want to be honest. Fresh start, he said simply. After my divorce. Wanted somewhere quiet for Lily. Somewhere she could just be a kid. Victoria nodded slowly. That makes sense. What about you? Daniel asked. This seems like a big house for one person. It is, she admitted. But I like the space. I travel a lot for work, and when I'm home, I need somewhere that feels separate from all of that. Somewhere I can just breathe. Daniel understood that more than she probably realized. The coffee mornings became a regular thing after that. Not every day, Victoria's schedule was unpredictable, and Daniel had his own chaos to manage, but often enough that he started to look forward to them. They'd sit on whichever porch got the better sunlight and talk about everything and nothing. Victoria never pried into his past, and he didn't push about her work. Instead, they talked about books, about the ridiculousness of HOA regulations, about Lily's newfound obsession with dinosaurs. It was easy, uncomplicated. For the first time since the divorce, Daniel felt like he could breathe without the weight of his failures pressing down on him. October arrived with crisp air and leaves that turned the neighborhood into a palette of gold and crimson. Lily was obsessed with Halloween, planning her costume with the kind of intense focus usually reserved for NASA missions. She'd decided to be a paleontologist, complete with a vest full of pockets and a plastic dinosaur skull she'd found at a yard sale. Daddy, do you think Ms. Victoria would want to see my costume? Lily asked one evening while Daniel was making dinner. I'm sure she would, Lily Bean, but she's probably busy with work. She's never too busy, Lily said with the absolute certainty of a 6-year-old. She always has time to talk to me. Daniel paused mid-stir, something warm and unfamiliar settling in his chest. Lily was right. Whenever she ran into Victoria, the woman would stop whatever she was doing and give Lily her full attention. She'd ask about school, about her favorite books, about the rock collection Lily was building in the backyard. Most adults humored children. Victoria actually listened. That Friday evening, Daniel found himself thinking about Victoria more than usual. It had been a long week, a complicated rewiring job that had run over schedule, Lily coming down with a cold, the general exhaustion that came with single parenthood. He'd just gotten Lily to bed when his phone buzzed with a text from his coworker, Marcus. Hey man, my wife's friend is single, smart, funny, pretty. Want me to set something up? Daniel stared at the message for a long moment. He hadn't been on a date since before the divorce was finalized. The idea felt foreign, almost uncomfortable. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe he'd been hiding for too long. Sure, he typed back. Why not? The date was set for the following Friday. Her name was Amanda. She worked in marketing, and according to Marcus, she was totally your type. Daniel had no idea what his type was anymore, but he showed up at the restaurant anyway, wearing the one nice shirt he owned that didn't have paint stains on it. Amanda was nice, attractive, articulate, easy to talk to. They discussed work, the city, safe topics that didn't require real vulnerability. She laughed at his jokes, asked thoughtful questions, and by all objective measures, the evening was a success. But Daniel felt nothing. No spark, no connection, just the mechanical rhythm of two people performing the dance of a first date because it was expected. He drove home with a vague sense of disappointment, though he couldn't quite articulate why. It was nearly 10 when he pulled into his driveway. The street was quiet, most of the houses already dark. But Victoria's porch light was on, and she was sitting on her front steps, a book in her lap, a glass of wine beside her. She looked up as Daniel got out of his truck and something in her expression shifted. Surprise, maybe, or curiosity. "Out late," she observed. Daniel walked over, suddenly grateful for the familiar presence. "Had a date. Coworker set it up." "Oh." Victoria's smile was polite, practiced. "That's nice. How did it go?" "It was fine." Daniel shoved his hands in his pockets. "She was nice. We had a pleasant conversation. But," he glanced at her, surprised by the perception, "but nothing. It just felt, I don't know, empty, like we were both going through the motions." Victoria took a sip of wine, her gaze drifting to the street. "Sometimes it takes time to find a real connection." "Maybe." Daniel sat on the step below her, suddenly not wanting to go inside to the empty house. "It's weird, you know? I thought I'd feel more something, excited, nervous, anything. Instead, I just kept thinking about how much easier it is to talk to you than it was to talk to her." The words were out before Daniel realized what he'd said. He looked up, ready to backtrack, but Victoria had gone very still. "Daniel, I didn't mean that in a weird way," he said quickly. "Just that you're easy to be around, like a friend." The word friend seemed to hang in the air between them, heavier than it should have been. Victoria set her wineglass down carefully, her fingers tracing the rim. When she spoke, her voice was quieter than usual. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course." She took a breath as if steeling herself. "I've enjoyed our mornings together. And the conversations. More than I probably should." Daniel frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Victoria looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw something vulnerable in her eyes that she usually kept hidden. "I mean that somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking of you as just a neighbor." The confession landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through everything Daniel thought he understood about their friendship. "Victoria." "I know," she said quickly, standing up as if the movement could somehow take back the words. "I know that's not fair to you. You just went through a divorce. You're raising Lily. You're clearly not looking for anything complicated. I shouldn't have said anything. I'm sorry." She moved toward her door, but Daniel stood too, his mind racing. "Wait, just wait." Victoria paused, her hand on the doorframe, but she didn't turn around. "I don't know what to say," Daniel admitted. "I wasn't expecting that." "I know you weren't." Her voice was steady, but he could hear the hurt underneath. "Forget I said anything. We can just go back to how things were." "Can we?" Daniel asked, the question coming out more pointed than he intended. Victoria finally turned, and the expression on her face, guarded, resigned, made something in his chest tighten. "We'll have to," she said simply. "You're seeing someone, and I'm clearly reading into things that aren't there. It's fine, Daniel, really." She stepped inside and closed the door softly, leaving Daniel standing alone on her porch. He walked back to his house in a daze, Victoria's words echoing in his mind. "I stopped thinking of you as just a neighbor." Inside, he poured himself a drink he didn't want and sat in the dark living room, trying to make sense of what had just happened. He'd been so focused on keeping his life simple, on protecting himself and Lily from any more pain, that he hadn't seen what was developing right in front of him. And now that he did see it, what was he supposed to do? The next morning, Victoria's porch was empty. Daniel waited with his coffee, but she never appeared. Her car was in the driveway, so he knew she was home, but the usual morning routine had been shattered. The silence felt wrong. Days passed, and the pattern continued. Victoria left early for work and came home late. On the rare occasions Daniel saw her, she'd wave politely from a distance but never stopped to talk. The easy friendship they'd built had evaporated overnight, replaced by a careful, painful politeness. Lily noticed immediately. "Why doesn't Ms. Victoria come over anymore?" she asked one evening at dinner. "She's busy with work, sweetheart." "But she always made time before." Lily pushed her peas around her plate, frowning. "Did we do something wrong?" "No, Lily Bean. Sometimes adults just need space." It was a terrible answer, and they both knew it. Daniel tried to focus on other things. He went on a second date with Amanda because it seemed like the path he was supposed to be on. They saw a movie, shared appetizers, made polite conversation. She was perfectly nice. He felt absolutely nothing. When he got home that night, he stood in his driveway and stared at Victoria's dark windows, wondering why he felt more drawn to the woman he barely knew than the one who was actively interested in him. The answer scared him more than he wanted to admit. October bled into November. The neighborhood prepared for Thanksgiving, yards filling with decorative turkeys and harvest wreaths. Daniel and Lily carved pumpkins, raked leaves, settled into their new normal. But the space where Victoria used to be felt like a wound that wouldn't heal. Then, on a gray Wednesday afternoon, Daniel came home early from a job that had been canceled. He pulled into his driveway and saw a sleek silver car parked in front of Victoria's house. Expensive, clearly not local. A man in a tailored suit was standing on her porch, laughing at something Victoria had said. He was tall, confident, the kind of person who belonged in Victoria's world in a way Daniel never would. Victoria looked relaxed in a way she hadn't in weeks, smiling as she gestured toward her garden. The man said something that made her laugh again, and Daniel felt something sharp and unexpected twist in his gut. Jealousy. Pure, irrational, undeniable jealousy. He went inside before they could see him, his heart pounding harder than it should. He had no right to feel this way. He'd made his choice. Or rather, he'd avoided making one. Victoria was moving on, exactly like she should. So why did it feel like losing something he'd never realized he wanted? That evening, after Lily was asleep, Daniel found himself standing at his living room window, looking at the house next door. The lights were on in Victoria's kitchen. He could see her moving around, putting dishes away, living her life. He pulled out his phone and stared at Amanda's last text, suggesting they get together again this weekend. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. Instead of responding, he opened a new message to Victoria, then closed it, opened it again. What could he possibly say? I'm sorry I didn't see you sooner. I'm sorry I was too broken to recognize what was right in front of me. I'm sorry I'm realizing this now when it might be too late. He deleted the unsent message and set the phone down. The next day, Daniel saw Victoria getting her mail. He'd been working up the courage to talk to her all week, and this felt like a sign. Hey, he called out, crossing into her yard before he could second-guess himself. Victoria looked up, surprise flickering across her face. Hi. I saw you had company yesterday, Daniel said, trying to sound casual and failing. You mean Richard? Victoria's expression cooled slightly. He's a colleague. We were discussing a project. Looked friendly. It was friendly. She folded her arms, and Daniel recognized the defensive posture. Is there a point to this conversation, Daniel? He faltered, suddenly aware of how ridiculous he sounded. I don't know. I guess I just wanted to check in. We haven't really talked in a while. That was intentional, Victoria said quietly. I told you things I shouldn't have, and I needed space to reset, to go back to being neighbors. Nothing more. The words nothing more landed like a punch. What if I don't want that? The question came out before Daniel could stop it. Victoria stared at him. You don't get to do this. Do what? Show up now with jealousy you have no right to feel. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. You're seeing someone, Daniel. You made your choice. And I'm trying to respect that and move on with my life. I'm not... Amanda and I aren't serious. It's barely even a thing. Then why are you dating her? The question was so direct, so unflinching, that Daniel didn't have an answer. Victoria shook her head, something sad settling into her features. You know what? It doesn't matter. You're looking for something simple, uncomplicated. I get it, but that's not what I am. I can't be the easy neighbor you have coffee with anymore, Daniel. It hurts too much. She turned toward her house, and Daniel felt panic rising in his chest. Victoria, wait. I think we should keep our distance, she said without looking back. It's better for both of us. The door closed behind her, and Daniel stood alone in her yard, the weight of everything he hadn't said crushing down on him. That night, he lay awake staring at the ceiling, Victoria's words playing on repeat. I can't be the easy neighbor you have coffee with anymore. She was right. He'd been using their friendship as a shield, something safe and comfortable that didn't require him to risk anything real. And in doing so, he'd hurt the one person who'd made him feel like himself again. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd been so afraid of getting hurt that he'd become the one causing pain. November continued its cold march toward winter. Daniel ended things with Amanda, kindly, honestly, admitting that his heart wasn't in it. She'd seemed relieved more than upset, which told him everything he needed to know. He tried to give Victoria the space she'd asked for, but every day without her felt wrong. The morning coffee ritual was gone. The easy conversations were gone. Even Lily had stopped asking about Ms. Victoria, sensing that something had broken between the adults that she didn't understand. Then came the first week of December. Daniel was in his garage organizing tools when he heard a vehicle pull up next door. He glanced out to see a moving truck, the same kind that had delivered his belongings months ago. His stomach dropped. He walked to the property line just as Victoria emerged from her house, directing two movers carrying boxes. "What's going on?" Daniel asked, though he already knew. Victoria turned, and the look on her face, resigned, tired, sad, confirmed his worst fear. "I'm leaving," she said simply. "Leaving? As in moving?" "Yes." She crossed her arms, not quite meeting his eyes. "I got an offer to relocate. It makes sense for work, and honestly, staying here has become difficult. Because of me. Because of everything." Victoria finally looked at him, and he saw the exhaustion there. "My life is already complicated, Daniel. Running a company, constant travel, expectations I can barely keep up with. I don't need the added complication of living next door to someone I have feelings for, but can't have." The admission, casual, matter-of-fact, devastating, stole the air from Daniel's lungs. "You're running a company?" A bitter smile crossed her face. "I'm the CEO of Vertex Solutions, the tech company downtown. I didn't tell you because it felt nice to just be Victoria for once, not the person everyone has expectations of. But that's the reality. My life doesn't leave room for simple things, and you deserve simple." "I never asked for simple," Daniel said, his voice rough. "Maybe not in words, but in every action." She turned back to the movers. "I'll be out by tomorrow." Daniel watched, helpless, as boxes were loaded into the truck. Pieces of Victoria's life, her books, her carefully tended garden tools, everything that had made her house feel lived in, disappeared one by one. That evening, he tried to explain to Lily why their neighbor was leaving. "But she can't go," Lily said, tears welling in her eyes. "She's our friend." "I know, sweetheart, but sometimes people have to move for work." "Did we make her sad?" The question broke something in Daniel. "No, baby, I did, and I don't know how to fix it." That night, after Lily finally cried herself to sleep, Daniel sat on his porch in the freezing December air and let himself acknowledge the truth he'd been running from. He'd fallen for Victoria Langford, not because she was successful or beautiful or any of the surface things, but because she saw him, really saw him, in a way no one else did. Because she made him laugh, because she treated Lily with genuine care, because talking to her felt like coming home, and he'd been too afraid, too damaged, too focused on protecting himself to realize it until she was already halfway out the door. The next morning came too fast. Daniel stood at his window, watching as Victoria supervised the last of the loading. Her car was packed, ready for the drive to wherever she was going next. The house that had been full of life just yesterday now sat empty, just another property on the street. When the truck pulled away, Victoria walked to her car. She paused, glanced toward Daniel's house, and for a moment he thought she might come over. Instead, she got in the driver's seat. Daniel's feet were moving before his brain caught up. He ran outside, barely feeling the cold, and reached her car just as she started the engine. He knocked on the window. Victoria looked up, startled, and rolled it down. "Daniel, what?" "Don't go." The words came out desperate, raw, everything he'd been holding back finally spilling over. "Don't go," he repeated. "Please. I know I have no right to ask. I know I screwed this up in every possible way. But, Victoria, I can't watch you drive away." "Daniel." Her voice was gentle but firm. "This is hard enough. I love you." The confession hung in the cold morning air between them. Victoria's eyes widened, her composure finally cracking. "What?" "I love you," Daniel said again, the words coming easier now. "I've been an idiot. I was so scared of getting hurt again that I convinced myself what we had was just friendship, that keeping you at arm's length was protecting us both. But it wasn't. It was just cowardice." Tears were sliding down Victoria's face now, though she didn't seem to notice. "You're seeing someone," she whispered. "I ended it weeks ago, because every second I was with her, I was wishing I was with you." Daniel moved closer, his hand on the car door. "You asked me once what I wanted. I want you, Victoria. Not the easy version, not the simplified neighbor version. You. The CEO who works too hard and reads too many books and makes me feel like I'm not just surviving anymore, but actually living." "I'm leaving," she said, but her voice wavered. "Then I'll follow you. I'll pack up Lily, and we'll figure it out. Or you can stay, and we'll figure it out here. I don't care where we are, as long as we're together." Victoria pressed her hands to her face, shoulders shaking. "You're impossible." "I know. This is insane." "I know that too." She looked up at him through tears, and for the first time in weeks, Daniel saw hope in her eyes. "I was so ready to leave," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "I had convinced myself it was over." "It's not over." Daniel pulled open the car door, helping her out, pulling her into his arms. "It's just starting." Victoria buried her face in his chest, and Daniel held her like he should have held her from the beginning, like she was something precious he'd almost lost. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red but bright. "I'm still scared," she admitted. "Me too," Daniel said honestly, "but I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you." Victoria smiled then, the real smile he'd fallen for months ago, and kissed him. The kiss was everything their careful friendship had been building toward: relief and promise, and the terrifying beauty of finally being honest. When they broke apart, breathing hard, Daniel saw movement in his peripheral vision. Lily was standing in the doorway, eyes wide. "Does this mean Ms. Victoria isn't leaving?" she called out. Victoria laughed, wiping her eyes. "Yeah, Lily Bean, I'm staying." Lily's whoop of joy echoed down the quiet street. Later that afternoon, after the moving truck had been sent away and Victoria's belongings were being unpacked once again, Daniel found himself sitting on Victoria's porch with her head resting on his shoulder. "So," Victoria said, her fingers laced through his. "CEO, huh? Still processing that one. Try being the guy who almost let her drive away." "You didn't, though." She looked up at him. "You ran after me. That counts for something." "Everything," Daniel corrected. "It counts for everything." The sun was setting over the neighborhood, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Lily was in the backyard, playing with the dog Victoria had apparently been planning to adopt before the move, a plan she was now thrilled to continue. This wasn't the life Daniel had imagined when he moved to this quiet street. It was messier, more complicated, more terrifying in its possibilities. But as Victoria squeezed his hand and Lily's laughter drifted through the evening air, Daniel realized something fundamental had shifted. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. Really, truly living. And for the first time since his world had fallen apart, the future didn't feel like something to dread. It felt like something worth fighting for. The December cold settled into something deeper as the days passed, the kind of winter that made Chicago suburbs feel both cozy and isolating. But inside the warmth of what Daniel and Victoria were building together, the outside world seemed to matter less with each passing day. That first week after Victoria decided to stay felt surreal, like Daniel kept waiting for someone to tell him he'd imagined the whole thing. But every morning when he looked out his window and saw her car still in the driveway, when Lily ran next door without hesitation, and Victoria opened the door with that genuine smile, the reality of it settled a little deeper into his bones. They were doing this, really doing this. But reality, Daniel was learning, had a way of being more complicated than the movie moments. It was the following Saturday morning when the first real test came. Daniel was making pancakes while Lily sat at the kitchen table, drawing elaborate pictures of dinosaurs, when his phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "Need to talk about Christmas arrangements. Call me." The words were typical Sarah, terse, demanding, offering no room for negotiation. Daniel's stomach tightened the way it always did when his ex-wife inserted herself back into his carefully constructed piece. He dialed her number, already bracing himself. "It's about time," Sarah answered, skipping any greeting. "I've been trying to reach you all week." "I've been busy, Sarah. What's this about?" "Christmas. I want Lily for the whole week. I already told my parents she's coming, and they've planned activities." "No." The word came out harder than Daniel intended, but he didn't soften it. "We have an agreement. I have her Christmas Eve and Christmas Day this year. You get her the week after. Plans change, Daniel. My parents haven't seen her in months. That's not my problem. You chose to move 3 hours away. The custody agreement stands. There was a pause, and Daniel could practically hear Sarah recalibrating her approach. You're being selfish, she said, her voice taking on that wounded tone she used when she wanted something. You're keeping her from her grandparents at Christmas. I'm following the court order, the same one you fought me on for 6 months. Fine. Sarah's voice turned cold. But don't be surprised when Lily remembers who actually wanted to make her holiday special. The call ended before Daniel could respond. He set the phone down, his hands shaking slightly. Even now, months after everything was finalized, Sarah knew exactly which buttons to push. The guilt, the second guessing, the fear that maybe he was being selfish. Maybe he wasn't putting Lily first. Daddy? The pancakes are smoking. Daniel jerked back to the present, quickly pulling the pan off the heat. The pancakes were burnt around the edges, salvageable, but not pretty. Sorry, Lily Bean, got distracted. Was that Mommy on the phone? Daniel glanced at his daughter, taking in the careful neutrality in her expression. Lily had learned early not to take sides, and it broke his heart every time he saw that self-protective instinct kick in. Yeah, sweetheart. Just talking about Christmas plans. Am I going to her house? Not until after Christmas. You're with me for the actual day. Daniel plated the pancakes, trying to inject some enthusiasm into his voice. We'll make it special. I promise. Lily nodded, but something in her small face suggested she'd heard promises before. The knock on the door came just as Daniel was drowning the burnt pancakes in syrup to hide the damage. He opened it to find Victoria standing there with a bakery box and 2 cups of coffee. Saw your kitchen light on early and thought. She stopped, taking in his expression. What's wrong? Nothing, just Sarah being Sarah. Victoria's eyes sharpened with understanding. She'd heard enough about Daniel's ex-wife over the past months to recognize the signs of a difficult conversation. Can I come in? Daniel stepped aside and Victoria entered with the easy familiarity of someone who belonged there. Lily's face lit up immediately. Miss Victoria, did you bring cinnamon rolls? I did. The good ones from Anderson's. Victoria set the box on the table and ruffled Lily's hair affectionately. Though it looks like your dad already made breakfast. He burned the pancakes, Lily reported matter-of-factly, because Mommy called and made him upset. Victoria glanced at Daniel, one eyebrow raised. Out of the mouths of babes, he muttered. They settled around the table, Lily happily demolishing a cinnamon roll, while Daniel explained the phone call. Victoria listened without interrupting, her hand resting near his on the table. Not quite touching, but close enough that he could feel the warmth of her presence. She does this every time there's a holiday coming up, Daniel said. Tries to renegotiate the custody agreement. Makes me feel like I'm being unreasonable for wanting to spend time with my own daughter. You're not being unreasonable, Victoria said quietly. You're following a legal agreement that protects Lily's stability. I know that logically, but emotionally... He broke off, glancing at Lily to make sure she was absorbed in her breakfast and not listening. Part of me still worries I'm being selfish, that I'm keeping Lily from her mom because I'm bitter about the divorce. Are you? Bitter about the divorce? Daniel considered the question honestly. Not anymore. Angry sometimes at how she handled it, yeah. But bitter? No. I'm grateful, actually, because if she hadn't blown everything up, I'd still be in that miserable marriage. And I never would have moved here. Never would have met you. Victoria's expression softened, and she finally took his hand, lacing their fingers together. Sarah doesn't get to dictate your relationship with Lily, she said. And she definitely doesn't get to make you feel guilty for being a good father. Ms. Victoria? Lily looked up, a ring of icing around her mouth. Are you going to be here for Christmas too? The question hung in the air, innocent but loaded with implications. Daniel and Victoria had been taking things slowly, coffee mornings, dinners a few times a week, carefully navigating what it meant to build a relationship when a 6-year-old's heart was also involved. Victoria looked at Daniel, a question in her eyes. I'd like that, he said. If you want to. I want to, Victoria said, squeezing his hand. Then to Lily, I'll be here, sweetie, though I'm not very good at wrapping presents, so you might have to help me. Lily beamed. I'm really good at wrapping. Daddy lets me use all the tape I want. That explains the tape shortage, Daniel muttered, earning a laugh from Victoria that eased some of the tension still coiled in his chest. The day continued with the comfortable chaos of weekend routines. Victoria went home to handle some work calls, and Daniel took Lily to the hardware store to pick up supplies for a repair job. But his mind kept drifting back to that moment at the breakfast table, the ease with which Victoria had slipped into their lives, the way Lily had assumed she'd be part of their Christmas without hesitation. It felt right. It also felt terrifying. That evening, after Lily was in bed, Daniel found Victoria in her garden, despite the cold, pruning back dead growth in preparation for winter. "You know you can do that in the spring," he said, settling onto her porch steps. "I like the ritual of it, clearing away what's dead to make room for new growth." She clipped another brown stem, then set down her shears and sat beside him. Metaphor not intended, but accurate. "Subtle as a brick?" Victoria smiled, then sobered. "Are you okay? After this morning?" "Yeah, I think so." Daniel leaned back on his elbows, staring up at the clear night sky. "It's just strange, you know. I spent so long in survival mode, just getting through each day, making sure Lily was okay, not thinking beyond the next meal or bedtime story. And now there's this whole future opening up, and I don't know how to navigate it." "What does that future look like to you?" Daniel turned his head to look at her, really look at her. Victoria Langford, CEO of a tech company, brilliant and successful and completely out of his league by any objective measure. And yet here she was, sitting on her porch in old jeans and a sweater, asking him about the future like his answer actually mattered. "Honestly, I'm still figuring that out. I know I want you in it. I know I want Lily to grow up with stability and love, not the chaos Sarah and I put her through. Beyond that," he shrugged, "I'm making this up as I go." "That's okay," Victoria said. "I'm making it up too." "Really? You seem like you have everything figured out." Victoria laughed, but there was a bitter edge to it. "I'm good at appearing like I have it together. That's part of the job. But the truth? I'm terrified half the time. Running a company means constantly making decisions that affect hundreds of people's livelihoods. One wrong move, one bad quarter, and everything could collapse." It was the first time Daniel had heard her speak so openly about the pressure she carried. "Is that why you keep it separate?" he asked. "Your work life from here?" "Partly. When I'm home, I need to just be Victoria. Not the CEO, not the person everyone wants something from. Just me." She met his eyes. "You let me be that. From the beginning, you never treated me differently because of my job." "I didn't know about your job." "Exactly." Victoria smiled. "You just saw me as the neighbor who needed help with a box of books. It was refreshing. And now? Now that I know you basically run the tech world in your spare time? You brought me coffee this morning and let your daughter teach me how to properly use tape. I think we're good." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind of quiet that only exists between people who don't need to fill every moment with words. A car passed on the street, its headlights briefly illuminating the frost beginning to form on the grass. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said eventually. "Always." "What are you afraid of? With us, I mean." The question was gentle but direct, so perfectly Victoria that Daniel almost smiled. "Screwing it up," he admitted. "Letting you down. Dragging you into the mess that is my life. Custody battles and tight budgets, and a 6-year-old who sometimes has nightmares about her parents fighting." He paused. "Being not enough." Victoria turned to face him fully, her expression serious. "Daniel, you're raising an incredible little girl on your own while building a business, and somehow still finding time to fix your neighbor's porch steps without being asked. You're doing more than enough. That's just basic being a decent person. No, it's not. Trust me, I've met plenty of people who can't manage half of that with twice the resources." She took his hand. "And as for being enough, Daniel, you make me laugh. You listen when I need to vent about work stress. You don't try to fix me or change me or turn me into someone easier. That's more than enough." Daniel pulled her closer, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him, and for a moment, everything felt simple again. "What are you afraid of?" he asked. Victoria was quiet for a long time before answering. "Losing myself," she said finally. "I've worked so hard to build my career, to prove I belong in rooms where people assume I'm someone's assistant. And I'm afraid that if I let myself want this, want you, want a relationship, Want the whole domestic dream, something will have to give, that I'll have to choose. Between what? Between being the CEO who can't afford to show weakness and being the woman who wants to make pancakes on Saturday mornings and fight about whose turn it is to take out the trash. Daniel processed this, understanding clicking into place. You think you can't have both? I don't know many women who do, not at my level. Victoria's voice was soft but steady. The ones who make it to the top usually sacrifice their personal lives. And the ones who prioritize relationships, they're the ones passed over for promotions because they're not committed enough. That's bullshit. That's reality. She looked up at him. So yes, I'm terrified. Because I want this with you and I want my career and I don't know if I'm allowed to have both. Who says you're not allowed? The world. The board of directors. Every article written about successful women that includes a paragraph about their difficult choices. Victoria shook her head. Sorry, this got heavy. No, I'm glad you told me. Daniel tightened his arm around her. For what it's worth, I don't think you should have to choose, and I'm not going to be the guy who asks you to. Victoria looked at him with something like wonder. You mean that? Of course I mean it. You being a CEO is part of who you are. I'm not going to love all the other parts and resent the thing you've built your life around. He paused. Though I reserve the right to complain when you have to take calls during dinner. She laughed, the tension breaking. Fair enough. They stayed on the porch until the cold became unbearable, then Daniel reluctantly headed home. But as he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, he felt something shift in his chest. The fear was still there, fear of failure, of loss, of somehow ruining the best thing that had happened to him in years. But underneath the fear was something stronger, hope. The next few weeks passed in a blur of early winter routines and careful relationship navigation. Victoria's work schedule intensified as the company pushed toward year-end deadlines, which meant late nights and weekend calls. Daniel tried to be understanding, but he couldn't deny the sting of disappointment when she had to cancel plans or cut conversations short. I'm sorry, she said one Thursday evening when she had to leave dinner early for an emergency board meeting. I hate this. I know, it's okay. It's not okay, but it's necessary. Victoria grabbed her coat, already mentally shifting into work mode. I'll make it up to you this weekend. I promise. But the weekend brought another crisis. A security breach at the company that required Victoria's immediate attention. She spent Saturday locked in her home office, and Daniel only saw her briefly when she emerged for coffee with exhaustion written across her face. Go back to bed, he told her gently. You need sleep. I need to fix this mess before the press gets wind of it. But she let him guide her to the couch, accepted the coffee with trembling hands. I'm sorry. This isn't what you signed up for. I signed up for you, all of you, including the messy work crises. Victoria closed her eyes. You say that now. Daniel didn't respond because he could hear the fear underneath her exhaustion. She was testing him, waiting for him to prove her right, that he couldn't handle dating someone whose career demanded so much. He was determined to prove her wrong. By Monday, the crisis had been contained and Victoria emerged from her work cave looking like herself again. That evening, she showed up at Daniel's door with takeout and an apology. I'm sorry about this weekend, she said without preamble. I know I disappeared, and that's not fair to you or Lily. You were dealing with a work emergency. That's allowed. Is it, though? Victoria set the food on the counter, her movements tense. Because I keep waiting for you to tell me this is too much, that you need someone who can be more present. Daniel studied her carefully. This wasn't just about the weekend. This was about every relationship where her career had been the problem, every time she'd been made to feel like her ambition was a flaw. Victoria, look at me. She did, reluctantly. I'm not going anywhere, he said. Yes, this weekend sucked. I missed you. Lily missed you. But that doesn't mean I want someone different. It means I want better communication about what you need when work gets crazy. What I need? Yeah. Do you need space to handle it alone? Do you need someone to bring you food and make sure you sleep? Do you need to vent about incompetent board members? He smiled slightly. I can't read your mind, but I can support you if you tell me how. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. You're serious. Completely serious. She crossed the space between them and kissed him hard, pouring months of fear and relief into the contact. When they broke apart, she was smiling. Incompetent board members, she said. Definitely need to vent about incompetent board members. I can do that. They ate dinner while Victoria ranted about the security breach, how it could have been prevented, the vendors who'd failed, the board members who'd panicked instead of letting her do her job. Daniel listened, asked questions, and resisted the urge to try to fix problems that weren't his to solve. Lily wandered in halfway through, curling up next to Victoria on the couch. "Are you okay, Ms. Victoria?" "Well," she asked seriously. "You look tired." "I am tired, sweetheart, but I'm better now. Daddy says you have a really important job, like a superhero but with computers." Victoria laughed, the sound genuine. "Something like that." "Do you catch bad guys?" "Sometimes. Mostly I try to stop bad guys from stealing information." Lily considered this gravely. "That's very important. You should rest so you can keep people safe." Daniel watched Victoria's expression soften, watched her pull Lily into a gentle hug, and felt his heart crack open a little wider. This was what he wanted. Not the perfect, easy version where nothing ever went wrong, but the real version, where work was hard and schedules conflicted, but they showed up for each other anyway. December deepened, bringing the first real snow and the mounting pressure of Christmas preparations. Daniel had always loved the holidays before the divorce. The decorating, the baking, the magic of watching Lily's face light up. But last year had been a minefield of painful firsts, trying to create traditions from the wreckage of his marriage. This year felt different. Victoria had somehow made it onto the neighborhood Christmas lights committee, which Daniel found hilarious given that she could barely keep a cactus alive. "How did this happen?" he asked, watching her attempt to untangle a massive ball of light strings in his garage. "Mrs. Patterson cornered me at the mailbox. I was distracted thinking about work, and before I knew it, I'd agreed to help." She held up the tangled mess. "I'm beginning to regret that decision." "Here, let me." Daniel took the lights, his electrician's hands making quick work of the knots. "You're better at strategy than execution anyway." "Is that a nice way of saying I'm useless at manual labor?" "It's a nice way of saying you have other skills." He grinned. "Like running a tech empire." They spent the afternoon stringing lights along Daniel's roofline, with Lily acting as quality control from the yard below. "More on the left, Daddy." "No, your other left." "I only have one left, Lily Bean." "Then use it better." Victoria burst out laughing, and the sound carried across the cold air like music. Daniel looked down at her from the ladder, this brilliant woman who was helping him hang Christmas lights like it was the most natural thing in the world, and felt something settle in his chest. This was what falling in love felt like when you did it right, when you did it with your eyes open. That evening, after Lily was asleep, they sat in Daniel's living room with mugs of hot chocolate, admiring the lights through the window. "I never had this," Victoria said quietly. "What?" "This whole suburban Christmas thing. My parents weren't big on traditions, and once I started working, the holidays just became another deadline to manage." She cupped her hands around the mug. "I didn't know what I was missing." "It's not always this nice," Daniel admitted. "Last year was rough. Trying to make Christmas special for Lily while processing the divorce, dealing with Sarah's family, making passive-aggressive comments about my poor decisions." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It led here." He set down his mug and took her hand. "To you, to this. I wouldn't change it." Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm glad you ran after my car." "Me too. Though in retrospect it was slightly unhinged." "Slightly?" "Okay, very unhinged, but it worked." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the snow begin to fall outside. Somewhere in the neighborhood, Christmas music played faintly. A car drove by slowly, probably admiring the lights they'd just hung. "Daniel?" Victoria's voice was soft, almost hesitant. "Yeah? I think I'm falling in love with you." The words landed gently, like the snow accumulating on the windowsill. Daniel turned to look at her, taking in the vulnerability in her expression, the fear mixed with hope. "I know I'm falling in love with you," he said. "Have been since those coffee mornings. Maybe before." Victoria's smile was radiant. "Yeah?" "Yeah." He kissed her softly, tasting chocolate and possibility. "Is that okay?" That's more than okay. They stayed up late into the night talking about everything and nothing, building the foundation of something that felt permanent in a way Daniel hadn't experienced before. Not the desperate, rushed permanence of his marriage to Sarah, built on pregnancy and obligation, but the steady, chosen permanence of two people deciding every day to show up for each other. The week before Christmas brought its own challenges. Sarah called again, this time demanding to FaceTime with Lily every evening, disrupting bedtime routines and leaving Lily unsettled. "Mommy says she misses me," Lily said one night after a particularly difficult call. "She says if I really loved her, I'd want to spend Christmas with her." Daniel's blood boiled, but he kept his voice calm. "Your mom loves you very much, and she does miss you. But love isn't measured by which holidays you spend where. You love both of us, and that's okay." "She was crying, Daddy." The manipulation was so obvious, so calculated, that Daniel wanted to throw his phone across the room. Instead, he pulled Lily into his lap. "Sweetie, grown-ups sometimes have big feelings about things, and sometimes they don't handle those feelings very well. That's not your job to fix." He tilted her chin up gently. "You are not responsible for making your mom happy. That's her job. Your job is to be 6 and play with dinosaurs and eat too many cookies. Okay?" Lily nodded, but the worried crease between her eyebrows didn't fully disappear. Daniel called Sarah that night after Lily was asleep, his voice hard. "Stop putting that guilt on her." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. You're making a 6-year-old feel responsible for your emotional state. It ends now, Sarah, or I'll be calling my lawyer about modifying the communication terms of our agreement. You can't watch me." He hung up before she could respond, hands shaking with anger. Victoria found him 20 minutes later pacing in his kitchen. "I heard raised voices," she said carefully. "Everything okay?" Daniel explained the situation, the words tumbling out harsh and frustrated. Victoria listened, then pulled him into a hug that he desperately needed. "You're a good father," she said firmly. "Don't let her make you doubt that. I just want Lily to be okay, to not carry the weight of our mistakes. She will be, because she has you." The certainty in Victoria's voice steadied something in Daniel. He held on to her, grateful for her presence, for the reminder that he wasn't navigating this alone anymore. Christmas Eve arrived with fresh snow and the kind of magic that only exists when you're 6 years old and believe in reindeer. Lily was vibrating with excitement, barely able to sit still through dinner. "Can we put out cookies for Santa now, and carrots for the reindeer? And can Ms. Victoria help?" Victoria had joined them for dinner, fitting into their little family unit as if she'd always been there. She helped Lily arrange cookies on a special plate, listened seriously to Lily's detailed instructions about what Santa preferred. "He likes chocolate chip best, but sugar cookies are okay too. And the carrots have to be fresh because reindeer are picky." "Very important information," Victoria said gravely. "I'll remember that." After Lily finally went to bed, a process that took an extra hour due to excitement, Daniel and Victoria sat by the tree, admiring their handiwork. Presents were wrapped in chaotic abundance of tape, lights twinkled, and Christmas music played softly from Daniel's ancient stereo. "This is nice," Victoria said. "Really nice." "It is." Daniel pulled her closer. "Thank you for being here. Where else would I be? I don't know. Some fancy CEO Christmas party? Networking with important people?" Victoria laughed. "I skipped 3 of those this week to be here. No regrets." They stayed up late assembling the bicycle Daniel had bought for Lily, laughing at the incomprehensible instructions and engineering failures. By the time they finished, it was nearly 2 in the morning, and they were both punch-drunk with exhaustion. "I should go home," Victoria said, but she didn't move. "Or you could stay. Guest room is yours if you want it." Victoria looked at him, weighing the invitation. It was a small thing, but it felt significant. Another step toward intertwining their lives. "Okay," she said finally. "But I'm stealing your shower in the morning." "Deal." Daniel woke Christmas morning to the sound of Lily's shriek of joy echoing through the house. He stumbled downstairs to find her circling the new bicycle, Victoria watching with an amused smile from the doorway. "Santa came. He really came. And he ate the cookies." Daniel caught Victoria's eye, and they shared a moment of perfect understanding. This was what family felt like. Not the traditional version he'd tried to force with Sarah, but something better, something chosen. The day unfolded in a blur of wrapping paper and laughter, pancakes burnt only slightly, and Lily's endless enthusiasm for every single present. Victoria had gotten her a complete dinosaur encyclopedia, which immediately became Lily's favorite thing. Look, Daddy, a Parasaurolophus. Ms. Victoria, did you know they could make sounds like trumpets? I did not know that. Tell me more. And Lily did, for the next 45 minutes, while Victoria listened with genuine interest, and Daniel fell a little more in love with both of them. That evening, after Lily had finally crashed from sugar and excitement, Daniel and Victoria sat on his couch, exhausted but content. Thank you, Daniel said, for making this Christmas special. You're the one who did all the work. No, I mean, he struggled to find the words. Last Christmas was about survival, getting through it without falling apart. This Christmas was about joy, and that's because of you. Victoria's eyes glistened. Daniel Hayes, you're going to make me cry. Is that bad? No. She kissed him softly. It's perfect. As the year wound toward its close, Daniel found himself thinking about how much had changed in 6 months. He'd moved to this neighborhood, broken, focused only on providing stability for Lily and keeping his own heart safely locked away. And then Victoria Langford had needed help with a box of books, and everything had shifted. She hadn't fixed him, he'd done that work himself. But she'd shown him that being broken didn't mean being unlovable. That vulnerability wasn't weakness. That choosing to love again, even when it terrified him, was the bravest thing he could do. New Year's Eve found them on Victoria's porch, bundled against the cold, watching fireworks in the distance. Lily was at Sarah's for the week, a concession Daniel had made to keep the peace, and the house felt too quiet without her. What are you thinking about? Victoria asked. How different everything is from a year ago. Daniel pulled her closer. How much better? Better is good. Better is terrifying, he corrected, because now I have something to lose. Victoria was quiet for a moment, then said, You know what I realized recently? What? Everyone talks about love like it's about finding someone who completes you, like you're incomplete without them. She looked up at him. But I don't think that's true. I was complete before I met you, and you were complete before you met me. So what is it then? It's about choosing to build something together. Not because you need each other to be whole, but because being together makes both your lives richer. Victoria smiled. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. Daniel kissed her forehead. Happy New Year, Victoria. Happy New Year, Daniel. As the fireworks painted the sky in brilliant colors and the neighborhood celebrated around them, Daniel felt something settle deep in his chest. Peace, maybe. Or hope. Or just the simple recognition that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The future was uncertain. It always would be. There would be more conflicts with Sarah, more work crises for Victoria, more late nights and difficult conversations. Love wasn't a solution to life's problems, but it was a reason to face them. And for Daniel Hayes, standing on a porch in suburban Chicago with the woman he loved in his arms, that was more than enough. January brought the kind of cold that made Chicago feel like a different planet. The kind where your breath froze in the air and every exposed inch of skin protested the moment you stepped outside. But inside the warmth of what Daniel and Victoria were building, winter felt less like an endurance test and more like an opportunity to stay close. The first real crack in their carefully constructed peace came on a Tuesday afternoon in mid-January. Daniel was under a sink in a client's basement, wrench in hand and water dripping steadily onto his face when his phone buzzed. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. You gonna get that? His client called down the stairs. Daniel wiped his hands on his jeans and checked the screen. 7 missed calls from Lily's school. His heart dropped into his stomach. He dialed back immediately, water from the sink forgotten. Mr. Hayes? The school secretary's voice was professionally calm, which somehow made it worse. We've been trying to reach you. Lily had an incident during recess. What kind of incident? Is she hurt? She's fine physically, but there was an altercation with another student, and we need you to come pick her up. 20 minutes later, Daniel was sitting in the principal's office with Lily beside him, her face blotchy from crying. Across from them sat another parent, A woman in yoga pants and an expensive jacket who looked like she was about to demand someone's head on a platter. "Your daughter pushed my son off the swing set," the woman said, her voice tight with restrained fury. "He could have been seriously injured." Daniel looked at Lily, who was staring at her shoes with the kind of intensity that suggested she was trying to disappear into them. "Lily, what happened?" "He said mean things," Lily whispered. "That doesn't give her the right to get violent," the other mother snapped. "I'm not saying it does," Daniel said, fighting to keep his voice level. "I'm trying to understand what happened." The principal, Mrs. Chen, folded her hands on her desk. According to witnesses, there was a verbal exchange before the physical altercation. "Lily, can you tell us what was said?" Lily's bottom lip trembled. "He said I don't have a real family because my mom and dad aren't together. He said I'm broken." The words hit Daniel like a physical blow. He saw the other mother's expression falter slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Kids say things. That doesn't justify violence." "You're right," Daniel said quietly. "It doesn't." He turned to Lily. "Sweetheart, look at me." Lily raised her tear-stained face. "You can't push people, even when they say mean things. Do you understand?" She nodded miserably. "But," Daniel continued, his voice gentle, "you are not broken, and we are a real family. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." The meeting concluded with Lily suspended for the rest of the day, a symbolic punishment that everyone knew was more about protocol than actual discipline. Daniel walked her to the car in silence, processing the weight of what had just happened. "Am I in big trouble?" Lily asked as he buckled her seatbelt. "You're in some trouble, yeah, because pushing isn't okay, and you know that." He paused. "But I'm also proud of you for standing up for yourself. We just need to work on how you do that." "I'm sorry, Daddy." "I know, baby. I know." When they got home, Victoria's car was already in her driveway. She must have finished her meetings early. Daniel sent her a quick text. "Rough day. Lily's home early from school. Rain check on dinner?" The response came immediately. "Coming over. Give me 5 minutes." True to her word, Victoria appeared at his door exactly 5 minutes later, carrying a bag from the bakery and wearing the concerned expression that had become familiar over the past months. "What happened?" Daniel explained while Lily sat at the kitchen table, methodically destroying a cookie without eating any of it. Victoria listened without interrupting, then crossed to where Lily sat and crouched down to her level. "Hey, sweetie, that sounds like a really hard day." Lily nodded, not meeting her eyes. "Can I tell you something?" Victoria waited until Lily looked up. "When I was about your age, a girl at my school said, I talked weird because my parents were from a different country. And I punched her." Lily's eyes widened. "You did?" "I did. Got suspended for 3 days. Victoria smiled slightly. "My mom was furious. But my dad told me something I never forgot. He said that words can hurt worse than punches, but responding with violence just proves you don't have better weapons." "What are better weapons?" "Words of your own. Confidence. Knowing who you are so well that someone else's opinion can't shake you." Victoria tucked a strand of hair behind Lily's ear. "You know you have a real family, right? It might look different than some other families, but it's real, and it's yours." "That's what Daddy said, because it's true." Victoria glanced at Daniel. "And families come in all shapes. Some have a mom and dad in the same house. Some have them in different houses. Some have 2 moms or 2 dads. Some have grandparents raising kids. None of those are more real than the others." Lily considered this seriously. "Do you think the boy was mean because someone was mean to him?" The question caught both adults off guard with its unexpected wisdom. "Maybe," Victoria said. "Hurt people sometimes hurt other people. That doesn't make it okay, but it helps to understand." After Lily went upstairs to play, Daniel and Victoria sat in the living room, the weight of the day settling around them. "Thank you," Daniel said, "for what you said to her. The thing about different families." "I meant it." Victoria pulled her legs up under her on the couch. "Kids are cruel because they're scared of anything that looks different from what they know. Lily's going to face more of this." "I know. Daniel ran his hands through his hair. "I hate that she has to. I hate that my failed marriage is something she has to defend." "It's not a failed marriage. It's a marriage that ended. There's a difference." "Is there?" Yes. Victoria's voice was firm. Failure implies you didn't try, that you gave up too easily. From everything you've told me, you tried. Sarah was the one who checked out, who betrayed the commitment. You just recognized when it was beyond saving. Well, Daniel wanted to believe that. Most days he did. But moments like today, when Lily paid the price for adult decisions, the guilt crept back in. She asked me something last week, he said quietly. Asked if you were going to be her new mom. Victoria went very still. What did you say? I said that's not how it works, that she already has a mom, and you're someone different, someone important, but different. He looked at her carefully. I hope that was okay. It was more than okay. It was exactly right. Victoria's expression was complicated, relief mixed with something that might have been disappointment. What did she say? She said that was good because she didn't want a new mom, but she did want you to stay. Daniel reached for Victoria's hand. I told her that was the plan. Is it? The question was soft, vulnerable. The plan? Yeah, unless you have other ideas. Victoria shook her head, then leaned against him. No other ideas. This is good. They sat in silence for a while, watching the afternoon light fade through the windows. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet, everyone tucked away from the cold. Can I ask you something? Victoria said eventually. Always. How do you do it? Balance being there for Lily while also having your own life? Daniel considered the question. Honestly, most days I don't feel like I balance it well. I'm either worried I'm not giving Lily enough attention, or I'm worried I'm smothering her. There's no instruction manual. But you make it look easy. It's not easy. It's just necessary. He turned to look at her. Why are you asking? Victoria was quiet for a moment before answering. Because I'm trying to figure out where I fit. In Lily's life, in your life. I don't want to overstep, but I also don't want to be so distant that I'm just the neighbor you're dating. You're not just anything, Victoria. You're... Daniel struggled to find the right words. You're part of our lives now, part of our family, even if the shape of that is still being figured out. Even though we've only been together a few months? Time doesn't matter as much as showing up does. And you show up. He squeezed her hand. For both of us. The conversation was interrupted by Lily calling down the stairs. Daddy, can Miss Victoria stay for dinner, please? Victoria laughed, the tension breaking. Well, I guess that answers the question about where I fit. Dinner was simple. Pasta and sauce from a jar, garlic bread, salad that Lily picked all the tomatoes out of. But it felt significant in the way ordinary moments often did. This was what building a life together looked like. Not grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but showing up on a Tuesday night to eat mediocre pasta and help a 6-year-old with her feelings. After Lily went to bed, Victoria helped Daniel clean up the kitchen. I have to go to New York next week, she said, scrubbing a pot with more force than necessary. Investor meetings, 3 days. Okay, Daniel heard the tension in her voice. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. She set down the pot. I hate leaving, especially now. We'll be here when you get back. I know that logically, but there's this part of my brain that's convinced if I'm not physically present, everything will fall apart. Victoria leaned against the counter, which is ridiculous. It's not ridiculous, it's just anxiety. Daniel moved closer. But Victoria, you can't be everywhere at once. Your company needs you in New York. That's part of your job. I know, I just wish I could split myself in half sometimes. Be the CEO when I need to be and be here the rest of the time. You're allowed to have both. You're allowed to love your work and love your personal life. Victoria looked at him with something like desperation. Am I, though? Because it feels like every successful woman I know has had to sacrifice one for the other. Then maybe they didn't have the right partner. Daniel pulled her into a hug. I'm not going anywhere, Victoria. Go to New York, charm your investors, close whatever deal needs closing. Lily and I will be here eating too much pizza and probably building something that violates multiple safety codes. She laughed against his chest. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. Hard, but simple. He pulled back to look at her. I love you. That doesn't change because you get on a plane. The words hung in the air between them. It was the first time either of them had said it so directly, without qualifiers or context. I love you too, Victoria whispered. So much it scares me. Good scared or bad scared? Both. Daniel kissed her then, pouring every reassurance he couldn't articulate into the contact. When they broke apart, Victoria was smiling. Okay, she said. Okay. I can do this. You can do this. The week Victoria was in New York felt longer than it should have. Daniel and Lily fell into their usual routine, but there was a Victoria-shaped absence in everything. No morning coffee conversations, no spontaneous dinners, no voice calling out to Lily in the backyard. They FaceTimed every evening, Victoria appearing on the screen in various hotel rooms and conference spaces, always looking polished, but exhausted. How's the merger going? Daniel asked on the second night. It's not a merger, it's an acquisition. And it's going exactly as badly as I expected. Victoria rubbed her temples. The other CEO is convinced his company is worth twice what it actually is, and he's making this whole process miserable. So why acquire them? Because they have technology we need, and building it ourselves would take 3 years and cost more than just dealing with his ego. She sighed. Sorry. I'm dumping work stress on you. That's what I'm here for. Dump away. Victoria smiled, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. How's Lily? Good. We made cookies today. Well, I made cookies. Lily made abstract art with frosting. I want to see. Daniel angled the phone to show the kitchen table where Lily's cookie creations were displayed in all their chaotic glory. Ms. Victoria! Lily appeared in frame, face still sticky with frosting. Look what I made! This one is a dinosaur eating a rainbow. It's beautiful, sweetie. Very creative. When are you coming home? The question was innocent, but Daniel saw Victoria's expression crack slightly. Tomorrow night, Lily Bean. I promise. After Lily went to bed, Daniel and Victoria stayed on the call, neither quite wanting to hang up. She called it home, Victoria said softly. This place. She said, when are you coming home? She did. That's big. Yeah. Daniel studied her through the screen. Is that okay? If this is becoming home for you? Victoria's eyes were bright with unshed tears. It's more than okay. It's everything I didn't know I wanted. The next evening, Daniel and Lily were making dinner when they heard a car door slam outside. Lily ran to the window. She's back! Miss Victoria's back! Before Daniel could respond, Lily had flung open the front door and was running across the yard. Through the window, he watched Victoria drop her bags and catch Lily in a hug, spinning her around in a way that was completely unlike her usual composed self. Something in Daniel's chest expanded painfully at the sight. By the time they made it inside, Lily was chattering non-stop about everything Victoria had missed. And Daddy let me stay up late on Wednesday because it was a special occasion. Even though I don't think it was really a special occasion, he just felt bad that you weren't here. And we watched a movie about dinosaurs, but it was scientifically inaccurate because the T-Rex had feathers wrong. Lily, give Ms. Victoria a chance to breathe, Daniel said, but he was smiling. Victoria looked exhausted but happy, her usual perfect composure slightly rumpled from travel. She caught Daniel's eye over Lily's head and mouthed, I missed you. He mouthed back, I missed you too. That night, after Lily was in bed and Victoria had showered off the travel grime, they sat on Daniel's couch with tea and the comfortable silence of people who didn't need to fill every moment with words. The acquisition went through, Victoria said eventually. We close in 30 days. That's good, right? It's good for the company. It means I'll be busier than usual for the next few months. More travel, more late nights. She set down her mug. I want to be honest about that. This isn't going to get easier in the short term. I appreciate the honesty. Daniel took her hand. But Victoria, I knew what I was signing up for. You told me from the beginning that your job is demanding. I know, but there's a difference between knowing theoretically and experiencing it practically. She looked at him seriously. If it gets to be too much, I need you to tell me. Don't just tough it out until you resent me. Same goes for you. If trying to balance everything becomes impossible, talk to me. Victoria nodded, but Daniel could see the worry still lingering in her expression. She was waiting for him to prove her fears right, to be the guy who couldn't handle dating a CEO, who needed someone more available. He was determined to prove her wrong. February brought a cold snap that made January look mild by comparison. Pipes froze, cars wouldn't start, and every weather forecast seemed to be competing for most apocalyptic predictions. But it also brought Valentine's Day, which Daniel had been quietly planning for weeks. "I need you to do me a favor," he told Lily one morning over breakfast. "What kind of favor?" "The kind where you spend Valentine's night at Emma's house for a sleepover, and don't ask questions about why." Lily's eyes went wide. "Are you doing something romantic with Ms. Victoria?" "Maybe." "Are you going to kiss her?" "That's not your business." "You totally are." Lily grinned. "That's gross, but also kind of nice." Daniel couldn't argue with that assessment. Valentine's evening, with Lily safely deposited at her friend's house, Daniel transformed his dining room into something that didn't look like a place where a 6-year-old usually ate chicken nuggets. Candles, actual cloth napkins he'd borrowed from Victoria's house, flowers from the grocery store that looked better than he'd expected. He'd ordered from the Italian place downtown that Victoria loved but claimed was too expensive for regular dining. He'd even attempted to make dessert himself, though the result was dubious at best. When Victoria arrived, he'd asked her to dress nice, which had made her suspicious but compliant. Her expression was worth every minute of preparation. "Daniel, this is... wow." "Too much?" "No, it's perfect." She stepped inside, taking in the scene. "When did you have time to do all this?" "I'm a man of many talents." He helped her out of her coat. "Some of them even include basic table setting." Dinner was easy in the way things had become easy between them. Good food, better conversation, the kind of comfort that came from really knowing someone. They talked about Victoria's latest board meeting nightmare, about Lily's upcoming science fair project, about the news and books and nothing at all. It was over dessert, which Victoria graciously pretended was edible, that the conversation turned more serious. "I got offered something," Victoria said, setting down her fork. Daniel's stomach tightened. "What kind of something?" "A position on the board of a major venture capital firm. It's prestigious, well-paid, exactly the kind of thing that would cement my reputation in the industry." But it would mean even more travel, more time away, more..." She broke off, frustrated. "More of everything that already makes this difficult." "Are you going to take it?" Victoria looked at him carefully. "I don't know. Part of me wants to, because it's an incredible opportunity. But part of me..." She paused. "Part of me is tired of always choosing my career over my personal life." "Who says you have to choose?" "Everyone. Society. The voice in my head that sounds suspiciously like my mother." Victoria smiled sadly. "You can't have it all, right? That's what they say. Something has to give." Daniel reached across the table for her hand. "What do you want? Not what you think you should want, or what makes the most sense strategically. What do you actually want?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "I want both," she said finally. "I want the career I've built, and I want this. You and Lily and this house, and this ridiculous neighborhood where Mrs. Patterson keeps trying to recruit me for book club." Her voice cracked slightly. "I want to stop feeling like I have to apologize for wanting both." "Then don't apologize." Daniel squeezed her hand. "Take the position if you want it. We'll figure out the logistics." "Just like that?" "Just like that." He smiled. "Victoria, I'm not going to be the guy who asks you to choose between me and your ambitions. That's not what love is." "What is love, then?" "It's figuring out how to make both things work. It's compromise and communication and showing up even when it's hard." Daniel stood, pulling her up with him. "It's this, right here. Choosing each other every day, even when the logistics are messy." Victoria kissed him then, hard and desperate, like she was trying to convey everything words couldn't capture. "I love you," she said when they broke apart. "I love you so much." "I love you too." They moved to the couch, abandoning the dinner dishes for later. Victoria curled into Daniel's side, and they stayed like that for a long time, just breathing together. "I'm going to turn it down," Victoria said eventually. "The board position?" "Yeah. Not because you asked me to, but because I realized something when you asked what I wanted." She looked up at him. "I already have what matters most. The job can wait. This can't." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Victoria smiled. "Besides, running one company is plenty. I don't need to complicate things further right now." Daniel kissed her forehead, relief and love and gratitude mixing together into something too big to name. The rest of February passed in a blur of cold weather and warm moments. Daniel's business picked up as people's heating systems failed and electrical problems multiplied. Victoria navigated the acquisition integration while somehow still finding time for morning coffee and bedtime stories with Lily. They were building something real, Daniel realized. Not perfect. There were still conflicts about scheduling, still moments of doubt and fear. But real in a way his marriage to Sarah had never been. This was partnership. This was choosing each other with eyes wide open. March arrived with the promise of spring still weeks away, but the worst of winter behind them. Lily's 7th birthday was approaching, and she had opinions about everything. "I want a dinosaur party," she announced one morning, "with a real paleontologist." "A real paleontologist might be expensive, Lily Bean," Daniel said carefully. "Ms. Victoria knows everyone. She can find one." Victoria, who was having coffee with them, nearly choked. "I don't know paleontologists, sweetheart." "But you're a CEO. You know important people." "Important people who work in technology, yes. Scientists who dig up dinosaur bones, less so." Lily looked devastated, and Daniel watched Victoria's resolve crumble in real time. "But," Victoria continued, "I can probably find someone who knows a lot about dinosaurs and would be willing to talk at a birthday party." Lily's face lit up. "Really? Really? Let me make some calls." After Lily ran upstairs to start making party invitations, Daniel turned to Victoria with raised eyebrows. "You don't have to do that." "I know, but did you see her face?" Victoria smiled. "Besides, how hard can it be to find a dinosaur expert?" 3 days and multiple phone calls later, Victoria had somehow secured a graduate student from Northwestern who specialized in paleontology and was thrilled to talk about dinosaurs to 7-year-olds for an hourly rate that made Daniel wince, but Victoria waved off. "It's her birthday. Let me do this." "Victoria, that's too much." "Daniel." She cut him off gently. "I want to do this. For Lily and for you. Please let me." And there it was again. That gesture of love that looked like hiring a paleontologist, but meant so much more. It meant showing up. It meant being part of their family in concrete, tangible ways. "Okay," Daniel said. "Thank you." The birthday party was chaos in the best possible way. 20 kids hopped up on sugar, running through Daniel's house while a patient graduate student explained the difference between Jurassic and Cretaceous periods. Victoria had thrown herself into the planning with unexpected enthusiasm, decorating with an abundance of inflatable dinosaurs and creating a fossil dig in the backyard using plaster bones she'd ordered online. Sarah had dropped Lily off that morning with barely a word to Daniel, but Lily was too excited to notice the tension. She ran through the party in a state of pure joy, showing off her dinosaur knowledge to anyone who would listen. "This is the best birthday ever," she told Daniel and Victoria during a rare quiet moment. "Thank you for making it special." Daniel watched Victoria's expression soften, watched her pull Lily into a hug that was as natural as breathing, and felt something slot into place in his chest. This was family. Messy and complicated, and nothing like what he'd imagined, but family nonetheless. That evening, after all the guests had left, and Lily had crashed on the couch in an exhausted sugar coma, Daniel and Victoria surveyed the wreckage of the party. "That went well," Victoria said, picking up a deflated Brachiosaurus. "It was perfect. You were perfect." Daniel pulled her close. "Thank you for doing all of this." "It was fun. I've never planned a kid's birthday party before." She paused. "Is it always this exhausting?" "Usually worse. This one was actually pretty contained." Victoria laughed, then sobered. "Can I tell you something?" "Always." Today felt important, like a turning point. She looked up at him. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for something to go wrong. But it hasn't. We keep just working." "We do." Daniel kissed her gently. "Maybe that's allowed. Maybe we get to have this." "I'm starting to believe that." On the couch, Lily stirred, mumbling something about pterodactyls before settling back into sleep. "She's going to be talking about this for weeks," Daniel said. "Good. She should have things to be excited about." Victoria rested her head on his shoulder. "We all should." Standing in his disaster of a living room, surrounded by deflated dinosaurs and cake crumbs, Daniel couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this content. The future was still uncertain. There would be more challenges with Sarah, more work crises for Victoria, more ordinary struggles of daily life. But for the first time since his divorce, he wasn't afraid of what came next. He had Victoria. He had Lily. He had this strange, beautiful life they were building together. And that was more than enough. The contentment Daniel felt in the aftermath of Lily's birthday party lasted exactly 2 weeks before reality came crashing back in with the force of a wrecking ball. It started with a phone call on a Tuesday afternoon. Daniel was replacing an outlet in Mrs. Patterson's kitchen when his phone rang with Sarah's number. He almost didn't answer. Their communication had been blessedly minimal since Christmas, but something made him pick up. "We need to talk," Sarah said without preamble. "About Lily." Daniel's stomach dropped. Those 4 words never meant anything good. "What about Lily?" "Not over the phone. I'm coming to Chicago this weekend. We can meet then." "Sarah, if something's wrong with Lily, you need to tell me now. She's fine. This isn't about her health." Sarah's voice had that tight quality that meant she'd already made up her mind about something. "Just meet me Saturday, noon at that coffee shop on Main Street." She hung up before Daniel could respond. He stared at his phone, dread coiling in his gut. Sarah didn't make 3-hour drives for casual conversations. Whatever this was about, it was big. That evening, he told Victoria about the call while they cleaned up after dinner. Lily was upstairs doing homework, her occasional groans about math problems drifting down to them. "She wouldn't give you any hint?" Victoria asked, drying a plate with more force than necessary. "Nothing, just that it's about Lily and we need to talk in person." Daniel leaned against the counter, exhaustion washing over him. "I have a bad feeling about this." "Don't borrow trouble before you know what it is." "Easy for you to say. You haven't dealt with Sarah's ambushes before." Victoria set down the plate and turned to face him. "Do you want me to come with you to the meeting?" Daniel considered it. Part of him wanted Victoria there. Her steady presence, her sharp mind, the way she could cut through emotional manipulation with logic. But another part knew that bringing his girlfriend to a meeting with his ex-wife would only escalate whatever Sarah had planned. "Better if I go alone," he said. "But thank you." "Okay, but I'm here if you need me. Before, during, after, whatever you need." Daniel pulled her into a hug, grateful for the solid warmth of her against him. "What did I do to deserve you?" "Ran after my car like a lunatic. Set the bar pretty high." He laughed despite the anxiety churning in his stomach. "Fair point." Saturday arrived too quickly. Daniel dropped Lily at Emma's house for a playdate, then drove to the coffee shop with his hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly. Sarah was already there when he arrived, sitting at a corner table with her phone and a latte that probably cost more than his lunch. She looked good. She always looked good, put together in that effortless way that had first attracted him years ago, before he'd learned that the polished exterior hid someone fundamentally selfish. "Daniel!" She stood to greet him, offering a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks for meeting me." "Let's skip the pleasantries, Sarah. What's this about?" They sat, and Sarah took a long sip of her coffee before speaking. "I'm getting married." Of all the things Daniel had braced himself for, that wasn't it. He blinked, processing. "Congratulations, I guess." "His name is Marcus. He's a financial consultant, very successful. We've been together for over a year now." Sarah's fingers traced the rim of her cup. "He's wonderful with Lily when she visits." Daniel felt the first stirrings of real alarm. "Okay, that's great, Sarah, but I'm not sure why you needed to tell me this in person." "Because Marcus got a job offer, a really good one, in Seattle." The alarm bells in Daniel's head became a full-blown siren. "No. You don't even know what I'm going to ask." "Yes, I do. And the answer is no." Daniel kept his voice low, controlled, even as panic flooded his system. "You're not taking Lily to Seattle." "I'm not taking her anywhere. I'm asking you to consider modifying our custody arrangement." Sarah leaned forward, her expression earnest in that practiced way. "Marcus has family there. Great schools, clean air, opportunities." "Lily has opportunities here. She has friends, a school she loves, stability. She'd have stability there too. With me and Marcus, a real family unit." "She has a real family." Daniel's voice was harder now. "With me. Here." Sarah's mask slipped slightly, irritation flashing across her features. Don't be selfish about this, Daniel. Think about what's best for Lily. I am thinking about what's best for Lily. And what's best for sure is not being uprooted across the country because you found a new man. That's not fair. Fair? Daniel laughed, the sound bitter. You want to talk about fair? You're the one who cheated, who blew up our marriage, who fought me for custody and lost. And now you want me to just hand over our daughter so you can play happy family in Seattle? I knew you'd be like this. Sarah's voice turned cold. I knew you'd make this difficult. If by difficult you mean protecting my daughter's stability, then yeah, I'm going to be difficult. Daniel stood. We have a custody agreement, Sarah. A legal one. If you want to move to Seattle, that's your choice. But Lily stays here. We'll see what the court says about that. The threat was delivered calmly, but it hit like a punch. You're taking me back to court? I'm asking for a modification hearing to present the case for why Lily would be better off with me full-time. Sarah stood too, gathering her things. My lawyer will be in touch. She walked out, leaving Daniel standing in the coffee shop with his world tilting sideways. He made it to his truck before calling Victoria. How bad? She asked the moment she picked up. She's moving to Seattle, wants to take Lily, says she's filing for a custody modification. Victoria was silent for a beat. Come over, right now. 20 minutes later, Daniel was sitting on Victoria's couch while she paced, her CEO brain clearly working through scenarios. Okay, first things first, don't panic. Too late. Daniel, listen to me. Victoria stopped pacing and crouched in front of him, taking his hands. You have primary custody. The burden of proof is on Sarah to show that moving Lily would be in her best interest. That's a high bar to clear. What if she clears it? Then we fight. You get a lawyer, a good one, and you fight. Victoria's voice was fierce. You're an excellent father. Lily is thriving here. Any judge worth their salt will see that. Sarah has money now. This Marcus guy is apparently loaded. They can afford better lawyers. So can I. Daniel stared at her. Victoria, I can't ask you to. You're not asking, I'm offering. She squeezed his hands. Daniel, I love you, and I love Lily. If Sarah wants to try to take her away, she's going to have to go through both of us. The declaration should have made him feel better, but instead it added a new layer of guilt to the fear. This isn't your fight. The hell it isn't. Victoria's eyes flashed. I'm part of this family, remember? You said so yourself. That means when one of us is in trouble, we all are. Daniel pulled her into his arms, holding on like she was the only thing keeping him afloat. Maybe she was. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you. They stayed like that for a long time, Victoria's presence the only thing keeping Daniel from completely falling apart. The next week was a nightmare of phone calls and legal consultations. Daniel hired a family law attorney named Rebecca Chen, who came highly recommended and had a reputation for being ruthless when she needed to be. The initial consultation was sobering. Sarah has a case, Rebecca said bluntly. Not a strong one, but a case. She can argue that a two-parent household with more financial resources would benefit Lily. The court will consider it. But I have primary custody. Doesn't that count for something? It counts for a lot. But family courts prioritize the best interest of the child above all else. We need to build a compelling case that staying with you is unequivocally better than moving to Seattle. How do we do that? Rebecca pulled out a legal pad. We document everything. Your involvement in Lily's life, her school performance, her social connections here. We get statements from teachers, neighbors, anyone who can speak to the stability you provide. And we prepare for Sarah to attack your character. What? She'll try to paint you as unable to provide adequately for Lily. She'll point to your work schedule, your income compared to theirs, anything she can use. Rebecca's expression was sympathetic but firm. It's going to get ugly, Daniel. You need to be prepared for that. He left the office feeling worse than when he'd entered. Victoria was waiting in her car outside. She'd taken the afternoon off to come with him, despite Daniel's protests. What did she say? Victoria asked as Daniel slid into the passenger seat. He told her everything, watching her expression grow harder with each detail. They're going to make it about money, Victoria said when he finished, about what they can provide versus what you can. Yeah. Victoria was quiet for a moment, then said, There's something I need to tell you. About my involvement. Daniel looked at her warily. What about it? If I'm going to help you, financially or otherwise, Sarah's lawyers will use that against you. They'll argue you're not stable on your own, that you need your girlfriend to prop you up. So what are you saying? Victoria turned to face him fully. I'm saying we need to make a decision. Either I step back publicly from this fight, or we go all in together. And if we go all in, we need to make our relationship official in a way that gives it legal weight. Daniel's heart was pounding. Are you saying... I'm saying that if we're going to present ourselves as a stable family unit, we need to be a stable family unit. In the eyes of the court. Victoria took his hand. Daniel, I'm not proposing. Not like this, not now. But I'm saying that if you want me to help you keep Lily, we need to consider making this serious. Really serious. The conversation was too much on top of everything else. Daniel felt like he was drowning, pulled under by waves of fear and confusion, and something that might have been hope if it wasn't so terrifying. I need to think, he said. I know. Take all the time you need. Victoria squeezed his hand. But whatever you decide, I'm here. Even if I have to stay in the background, I'm here. That night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel sat in his dark living room and tried to make sense of everything. 6 months ago, he'd been a divorced single father focused solely on survival and providing stability for his daughter. Now he was facing a custody battle that could take Lily away, while the woman he loved was essentially offering to marry him to help his legal case. It was insane. All of it. His phone buzzed with the text from Victoria. I'm sorry if I made things more complicated. That wasn't my intention. I just want to help. Daniel stared at the message for a long moment before responding. You didn't make anything complicated. You made it clearer. Can we talk tomorrow? Anytime. I love you. I love you too. The next morning, Daniel called his sister Emma, the one person who'd know what he should do. Let me get this straight, Emma said after he'd explained the situation. Sarah is trying to take Lily to Seattle, and Victoria is offering to basically fast-track your relationship to help your custody case? That's the simplified version, yeah. And you're worried that marrying Victoria would be for the wrong reasons. Wouldn't it be? Emma was quiet for a moment. Danny, do you love her? Yes, absolutely. And if none of this custody stuff was happening, could you see yourself marrying her eventually? Daniel thought about it honestly. Yeah, I could. Then the timing is bad, but the decision isn't wrong. Emma's voice was gentle. Look, I'm not saying rush into anything, but if Victoria is the person you want to build a life with anyway, does it matter if the catalyst is a legal battle or a romantic proposal? It feels like I'm using her. Have you asked Victoria if she feels used? Daniel hadn't. That evening, after Lily was in bed, he went next door. Victoria opened the door in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, her hair in a messy bun, looking more beautiful than anyone had a right to. We need to talk, Daniel said. Ominous opening. But Victoria stepped aside to let him in. They settled on her couch, the same couch where they'd had so many important conversations over the past months. I want to know the truth, Daniel said. If we did this, if we got married or engaged or whatever would help the custody case, would you feel like I was using you? Victoria considered the question seriously. No, because I'm offering this knowing exactly what it is. I'm not a naive kid who thinks love conquers all. I'm a 32-year-old CEO who understands strategic decisions. That's exactly what worries me, that this becomes a strategic decision instead of what? A grand romantic gesture? Victoria smiled sadly. Daniel, I already know you love me. You show me every day in 100 small ways. The proposal mechanics, when and how and why, those matter less than the actual commitment. But you deserve better than this. Better than a proposal born out of legal necessity. What I deserve is the life I choose, and I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you and Lily, and yes, the messy legal battle that comes with it. Victoria took his hands. But I need you to choose it too. Not because you feel obligated, and not because you think it's the only way to keep Lily. Choose it because you want this life with me. Daniel looked at this incredible woman who was offering him everything, asking for nothing except honesty. I do want this life with you, he said. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want Lily to officially have you as part of her family. I want to build something permanent and real, not because a custody battle is forcing my hand, but because you're the best thing that's ever happened to me." Victoria's eyes were bright with tears. "Yeah?" "Yeah." Daniel pulled her closer. "But I'm not going to propose right now, in your living room while we're both in sweatpants and stressed out of our minds." "No?" "No. Because when I propose, it's going to be because I want to, not because Sarah's lawyers are circling." He kissed her softly. "But I'm going to tell the lawyer that we're planning a future together, that you're part of Lily's life in a permanent way. And if that helps the case, good. If it doesn't, we deal with it." "We deal with it together," Victoria corrected. "Together," Daniel agreed. The custody battle consumed the next month. Rebecca filed their response to Sarah's petition, and the legal machine ground into motion. Discovery requests, depositions, endless documentation of Daniel's fitness as a parent. It was invasive and exhausting, and exactly as ugly as Rebecca had warned. Sarah's lawyers did exactly what Victoria predicted. They made it about money and resources. They painted Daniel as a struggling electrician who could barely keep up with bills, whose house was modest at best, who relied on his girlfriend for financial support. They questioned his work schedule, his ability to provide educational opportunities, his long-term stability. It was character assassination dressed up in legal language. The worst part was the impact on Lily. She knew something was happening. Kids always knew, but they'd tried to shield her from the details. Still, she picked up on the stress, became clingy in a way she hadn't been since the divorce. "Is Mommy mad at you again?" she asked one night during bedtime. Daniel chose his words carefully. "Mommy and I are working through some grown-up stuff, but it's not your job to worry about it." "But it's about me, isn't it? About where I live?" There was no point in lying. "Yeah, sweetheart, it is. But whatever happens, you need to know that both Mommy and I love you very much." "I don't want to move to Seattle," Lily said in a small voice. "I like it here. My friends are here. And Ms. Victoria is here." Daniel pulled her close. "I'm doing everything I can to make sure you don't have to move, Lily Bean. I promise." The hearing was scheduled for late April. As the date approached, Daniel felt like he was watching his life from outside his body, going through the motions of work and parenting while terror gnawed at his insides. Victoria was his anchor through all of it. She helped prep him for testimony, reminded him to eat when he forgot, took Lily to the park so Daniel could meet with lawyers. She never wavered, never suggested this was too much, never made him feel like a burden. But Daniel could see the toll it was taking on her too. The stress lines around her eyes, the way she was working later and later to make up for time spent helping him, the forced brightness when she talked to Lily. "You don't have to carry all of this," he told her one evening. "Neither do you. But we both are, because that's what you do for people you love." The night before the hearing, Daniel couldn't sleep. He stood at his bedroom window, looking out at the quiet street, at Victoria's house dark next door, at the neighborhood that had become home. His phone lit up with a text. "Can't sleep either. Come over?" Daniel grabbed his jacket and went. Victoria opened the door before he could knock, pulling him inside and into her arms without a word. They stood in her dark hallway, holding each other, drawing strength from the contact. "I'm terrified," Daniel admitted. "Me too." "What if I lose her?" "You won't." Victoria pulled back to look at him. "Daniel, listen to me. You are an amazing father. Lily is happy, healthy, thriving. Any judge will see that. And if by some nightmare scenario they don't, we'll appeal. We'll fight this until there's nothing left to fight with." "I can't lose her, Victoria. I can't." "You won't. I won't let that happen." The certainty in her voice was the only thing that let Daniel breathe. They spent the rest of the night on her couch, talking through fears and possibilities, building courage from their combined strength. As dawn started to lighten the sky, Victoria made coffee and they sat in the early morning quiet. "Whatever happens today," Victoria said, "we face it together, okay?" "Okay." The hearing was held in a sterile courtroom that smelled like old paper and anxiety. Daniel sat at the defendant's table with Rebecca while Sarah and her lawyer sat across the aisle. Marcus was there too, tall, polished, exactly the kind of successful man Sarah would choose. The judge was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an expression that gave nothing away. Sarah testified first, painting a picture of life in Seattle that sounded like something from a travel brochure. Great schools, stable two-parent home, financial security. She was poised and articulate, making it sound like moving Lily was the obvious choice of any loving parent. Then it was Daniel's turn. He spoke about Lily's friends, her school, the community they'd built. He talked about bedtime stories and science fair projects and the small routines that made up their life. He didn't try to match Sarah's polish. He just told the truth about loving his daughter and building a stable home for her. Rebecca called Victoria to the stand as a character witness. Daniel watched her take the oath, watched her transform into the CEO version of herself, confident, articulate, commanding the room. "How long have you known Mr. Hayes?" Sarah's lawyer asked during cross-examination. "About 8 months. And you're in a romantic relationship with him?" "Yes." "Isn't it true that you've been financially supporting Mr. Hayes and his daughter?" Victoria's expression didn't change. "I've contributed to activities for Lily, yes, birthday parties, educational materials, the same way any adult in a child's life might." "You paid for a paleontologist for her birthday party? That's a bit more than contributing to activities." "I wanted to make her birthday special." "Is there something wrong with that?" "It suggests Mr. Hayes cannot provide adequately for his daughter on his own." "It suggests," Victoria said calmly, "that Lily has multiple adults in her life who love her and want to contribute to her happiness. I fail to see how that's a negative." The lawyer pressed on, trying to paint Victoria as evidence of Daniel's instability. But Victoria didn't crack, didn't let them twist her words into something they weren't. When she stepped down, she caught Daniel's eye and offered a small, reassuring smile. The judge called for a recess, then came back with her decision faster than Daniel expected. "I've reviewed all the evidence presented," she said, her voice carrying through the quiet courtroom. "And while I appreciate Ms. Hayes' desire to provide a stable two-parent home for Lily, I find that the evidence does not support a modification of the current custody arrangement." Daniel's heart stopped. Mr. Hayes has demonstrated consistent, loving parenting. Lily is thriving in her current environment, academically, socially, emotionally. While a move to Seattle might offer certain advantages, it would also disrupt established relationships and routines that are clearly beneficial to the child. The judge looked at Sarah. "Ms. Hayes, if you choose to relocate to Seattle, that is your right, but Lily will remain with her father in Illinois under the current custody agreement. You may petition for modified visitation to account for the distance, but primary custody will not change." The gavel came down, and it was over. Daniel heard the words, but it took a moment for them to penetrate. He'd won. Lily was staying. Rebecca was shaking his hand, congratulating him. Across the aisle, Sarah was already gathering her things, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. She left without looking at him. Daniel walked out of the courtroom on shaking legs to find Victoria waiting in the hallway. The moment she saw his face, she knew. "You won." "I won." The words felt surreal. Victoria pulled him into a fierce hug, and Daniel felt something in his chest finally unclench. It was over. The nightmare was over, and Lily was safe. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything. You don't have to thank me. You did this. We did this." That evening, they picked Lily up from Emma's house together. She'd been too young to attend the hearing, but she understood enough to be anxious. "What happened?" she asked the moment she saw Daniel. "You're staying here, Lily Bean, with me." Lily threw herself into his arms with enough force to nearly knock him over. "Really? I don't have to move?" "Really? You don't have to move." "What about Mommy?" "Mommy's going to move to Seattle, and you'll visit her there sometimes. But this is home." Lily looked at Victoria, who was standing slightly apart, giving them space for their moment. "Is Ms. Victoria staying too?" "I'm not going anywhere," Victoria said with a smile. Lily detached from Daniel long enough to hug Victoria. "Good, because I need you both." Daniel watched his daughter in the arms of the woman he loved and felt the last piece of fear dissolve. They'd survived this. They'd come through the fire together and emerged intact. That night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel and Victoria sat on his porch despite the spring chill. "I want to ask you something," Daniel said. "Okay. But I need you to know it has nothing to do with the custody battle, or legal strategy, or anything except what I actually want." Victoria turned to look at him, something shifting in her expression. "Okay." Daniel took her hand, his heart pounding. "Victoria Langford, You drove into my life and changed everything. You made me believe in second chances. You loved my daughter like she was your own. You stood by me through the worst fight of my life without wavering. Daniel, I'm not done, he smiled. I don't have a ring right now, and this isn't the romantic proposal you deserve, but I need you to know that I want to marry you. Not because a judge might care, not because it makes strategic sense, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Victoria's eyes were bright with tears. Are you asking me to marry you? Not yet. Not until I can do it right, with a ring and a real plan and all the romance you deserve. Daniel brought her hand to his lips. But I'm asking if you'd say yes when I do. You're such an idiot, Victoria said, laughing and crying at the same time. Of course I'd say yes. They kissed under the porch light, and Daniel felt the future opening up before them, messy and complicated and absolutely perfect. The weeks following the custody hearing felt like emerging from a long tunnel into sunlight. Daniel woke each morning with a lightness in his chest that he'd forgotten was possible. The constant weight of fear finally lifted. Lily was staying. Victoria had said yes, or would say yes, when he asked properly. Life, for the first time in longer than he could remember, felt like it was moving forward instead of just surviving. But Sarah's move to Seattle in early May brought its own complications that Daniel hadn't fully anticipated. The first sign came when Lily returned from her first visit to Sarah's new home. Daniel picked her up from the airport, expecting his daughter to be excited about the plane ride or full of stories about seeing her mother. Instead, Lily was quiet in the back seat, staring out the window with an expression too serious for a 7-year-old. How was Seattle, Lily Bean? Daniel asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. It was okay. Just okay? Your mom said you went to the Space Needle and the aquarium. Yeah, it was fine. Lily's voice was small, distant. Daniel exchanged a worried glance with Victoria, who'd come along for the airport pickup. She reached back to squeeze Lily's hand. Want to tell us about it, sweetie? Victoria asked gently. Lily was quiet for a long moment before speaking. Mommy's house is really big, and Marcus has a pool, and there's a girl next door who's my age. That sounds nice, Daniel said carefully, sensing there was more. Mommy said I could have all of that if I lived there. She said it would be better than here. Lily's voice cracked. She said I chose wrong. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel, anger flooding through him. Victoria must have seen it in his face because she put a warning hand on his arm. Lily, Victoria said, her voice calm but firm, your mom is probably sad that you don't live with her. Sometimes when grown-ups are sad, they say things they don't mean. But what if she's right? What if I did choose wrong? Daniel pulled into a parking lot, unable to keep driving through this conversation. He twisted around to face his daughter fully. Look at me, sweetheart. Lily raised tear-filled eyes to meet his. You didn't choose wrong. You didn't choose at all. The judge decided what was best for you. And you know what? You can have a good life here and still love your mom and enjoy visiting her. Those things aren't opposites. But she seemed so sad, Lily whispered. And Marcus was really nice. He taught me to swim in the pool. I'm glad Marcus was nice to you. And it's okay that your mom is sad. That's her feeling to work through, not yours to fix. Daniel unbuckled his seatbelt so he could reach back and take Lily's hand. You are not responsible for your mother's happiness. Do you understand that? Lily nodded, but Daniel could see the confusion and guilt still written across her young face. This was the price of divorce that no one talked about, the way children absorbed their parents' pain and tried to carry it for them. That night, after Lily finally fell asleep, Daniel called Sarah. You can't do that, he said without preamble. You can't tell Lily she made the wrong choice. I didn't say that. Really? Because Lily came home today convinced she ruined your life by wanting to stay with me. Sarah was silent for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was tight. I miss my daughter, Daniel. I'm allowed to tell her that. You're allowed to miss her. You're not allowed to make her feel guilty about a custody decision she didn't make. Daniel forced himself to take a breath, to stay calm. Sarah, I'm not trying to keep Lily from you, but she's 7 years old. She can't handle being put in the middle of our issues. Our issues? You mean the issue where you turned her against me? I didn't turn her against anyone. The judge looked at the facts and made a decision based on what was best for Lily. The judge saw a struggling single father with a girlfriend willing to throw money at the problem, Sarah shot back. That's what the judge saw. Daniel closed his eyes, counting to 10 before responding. I'm not doing this with you. I'm asking you, as Lily's mother, as someone who loves her, please don't put this pressure on her. Let her enjoy her visits without guilt. Fine. The word was clipped, angry. Is there anything else? No, that's all. Sarah hung up without saying goodbye. Daniel found Victoria in the kitchen, making tea even though it was nearly 11 at night. How'd it go? She asked. About as well as expected. Daniel accepted the mug she handed him. She's angry, blaming me, blaming you, blaming the system. But not blaming herself. Never that. Daniel took a sip, letting the warmth settle him. I'm worried about Lily. This guilt she's carrying. It's not fair to her. No, it's not. Victoria leaned against the counter. Maybe we should talk to a child therapist. Get Lily some tools for processing all of this. You think she needs therapy? I think she's a 7-year-old navigating a complicated family situation. Some professional support couldn't hurt. Victoria met his eyes. What do you think? Daniel considered it. A year ago, he would have bristled at the suggestion, would have seen it as admission that he was failing as a father. But Victoria had taught him that asking for help wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. Yeah, he said finally. Let's look into it. They found a child psychologist named Dr. Martinez who specialized in divorce-related issues. Lily started seeing her twice a month, and slowly, the tight worry in her face began to ease. She learned to talk about her feelings instead of bottling them up, learned that loving both parents didn't mean choosing between them. It wasn't a magic fix. There were still hard days, still moments when Lily struggled with the weight of it all. But she was coping better, and that was what mattered. June arrived with the promise of summer break and all the chaos that came with a 7-year-old out of school. Daniel had lined up some day camps to cover the weeks he had to work, but he'd also arranged to take time off, something he'd never been able to do before. Are you sure about this? Victoria asked one evening as they planned the summer schedule. Taking 2 weeks off? Can your business handle it? It'll have to. I've been building this business for years, and I've never taken a real vacation. Daniel circled the dates on the calendar. Lily deserves a summer where I'm actually present, not just squeezed in between jobs. Where are you thinking of going? I don't know yet. Maybe a cabin somewhere? Beach? I'm open to suggestions. Victoria was quiet for a moment, then said, What if we all went somewhere together? You, me, and Lily. Daniel looked up from the calendar. Like a family vacation? Yeah, if that's not too presumptuous. I know we haven't. Victoria stumbled over her words in a way she rarely did. Victoria Langford, are you nervous about asking to come on vacation with us? Maybe a little. It feels like a big step. Daniel crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. It's a step I want to take. Let's do it. A real family vacation. Yeah? Yeah. They settled on a week at a lake house in Wisconsin, close enough to get to easily, far enough to feel like an escape. Lily was ecstatic when they told her, immediately beginning to plan elaborate water activities that would require equipment they didn't own. Can we go fishing and kayaking? And can Ms. Victoria sleep in the same cabin as us? And can we stay up late and look at stars? Yes to all of that, Daniel said, laughing at her enthusiasm. But Ms. Victoria gets her own room. Obviously, Lily said with the worldly wisdom of a child who knew more than she let on. Because you're not married yet. Yet. The word hung in the air like a promise. The week before the vacation, Daniel finally admitted to Victoria what he'd been planning. I'm going to propose during the trip. Victoria looked up from her laptop, eyes wide. Really? Really? I've been carrying this around for 3 weeks. He pulled out a small velvet box from his pocket. I wanted to wait for the right moment, and I think I found it. Victoria's hands flew to her mouth. Can I see it? Absolutely not. You'll see it when I propose. That's cruel. That's romance. Daniel grinned. But I wanted to tell you so you weren't completely blindsided, and so you could tell me if you have any reservations about being proposed to in front of Lily. Victoria considered it seriously. No reservations. Lily's part of this family. She should be there. Good. Because I already told her the plan and swore her to secrecy. Daniel Hayes, you told our 7-year-old before you told me? She's excellent at keeping secrets. You'd be surprised. Victoria threw a couch pillow at him, but she was laughing. The lake house exceeded all expectations. Set on a quiet shore with a dock that stretched into crystal clear water, surrounded by pine trees that smelled like childhood summers and possibility. Lily was in heaven from the moment they arrived, racing between the rooms and claiming the one with the best view of the lake. "This is perfect," Victoria said, standing on the porch and looking out at the water. "How did you find this place?" "Emma recommended it. Her family came here when she was a kid." Daniel wrapped his arms around her from behind. "I'm glad you like it." That first night, they grilled burgers and ate on the porch, while Lily regaled them with her plans for the week. After dinner, they taught her to play poker with candy as chips, and she proceeded to destroy both of them through what Daniel suspected was a combination of luck and card counting she'd learned from some YouTube video. "Where did you learn to bluff like that?" Victoria asked, as Lily raked in another pile of M&Ms. "I'm not bluffing. I'm strategizing." Lily arranged her candy by color with serious focus. "There's a difference." "She's your daughter," Victoria said to Daniel. "She's definitely your influence," Daniel shot back. "That's pure CEO energy." They stayed up late, the three of them, playing cards and telling stories until Lily finally crashed on the couch, her face sticky with chocolate. Daniel carried her to bed while Victoria cleaned up, and when he came back, she was standing on the porch looking at the stars. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, joining her. "Just thinking about how different everything is from a year ago." Victoria leaned into him. "How much better?" "Better is an understatement." They stood in comfortable silence, listening to the lake lap against the dock and the distant call of a nightbird. "I'm happy," Victoria said quietly. "Really, truly happy. I didn't think I was allowed to have this. The career and the family. But here we are." "Here we are," Daniel echoed. The week unfolded in a perfect rhythm of lazy mornings and adventure-filled afternoons. They taught Lily to kayak, went on a fishing trip where Lily caught the biggest fish and wouldn't stop talking about it, hiked through woods where Victoria identified birds with an accuracy that surprised both Daniel and Lily. "How do you know all these birds?" Lily asked, genuinely impressed. "I used to go birdwatching with my dad when I was your age," Victoria said. "It's one of my favorite memories. Can we go birdwatching together sometime when we get home?" Victoria's smile was radiant. "I would love that, sweetie." Daniel watched the interaction, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. This was what he'd been hoping for without knowing it, a family built not on obligation or convenience, but on genuine love and chosen connection. On the fourth night, Daniel decided it was time. He'd planned an evening picnic on the dock, complete with Lily's help in preparing all of Victoria's favorite foods. They waited until the sun was starting to set, painting the lake in shades of gold and pink. "Why are we eating outside?" Victoria asked suspiciously as Daniel led her toward the dock. "We have a perfectly good dining table." "Because Lily wanted to watch the sunset while we eat, right, Lily Bean?" "Right." Lily carried the basket of food with exaggerated care. "It's very important for the sunset watching." Victoria laughed, but didn't question further. They spread out a blanket on the dock and ate while the sky put on a show above them. Lily was practically vibrating with excitement, and Daniel had to shoot her several warning looks to keep her from blurting out the secret. As the sun dipped lower, turning everything golden, Daniel caught Lily's eye and nodded. She immediately jumped up. "I'm going to go look for frogs," she announced, too loud and too abrupt. "You two stay here and watch the sunset." She ran off before Victoria could respond, leaving them alone on the dock. "That was subtle," Victoria said, amused. "What are you two plotting?" "Who says we're plotting anything?" "Daniel, Lily has been about to explode with excitement all day. I know something's going on." Daniel stood, offering his hand to help Victoria up. "You're right, something is going on." He turned her toward the sunset. The lake stretched out before them like liquid gold. Then he dropped to one knee. Victoria's hands flew to her mouth, tears already forming in her eyes. "Victoria Langford," Daniel began, his voice steady despite the emotion flooding through him. 8 months ago, you needed help with a box of books. And somehow, in helping you carry that box, I found everything I didn't know I was looking for." Victoria was crying openly now, but she was smiling too. "You made me believe in second chances. You loved my daughter without hesitation. You stood by me through the worst fight of my life." You made coffee taste better, and mornings feel like possibilities instead of obligations. Daniel pulled out the ring box, opening it to reveal a simple diamond that caught the sunset light. You showed me that being broken doesn't mean being unlovable, and that choosing vulnerability is the bravest thing we can do. Daniel, Victoria's voice was choked with tears. I'm not done. He grinned up at her. Victoria, I love you. I love your brilliant mind and your terrible gardening skills. I love how you listen to Lily's dinosaur facts like they're the most important things in the world. I love how you fight for what matters and never apologize for your ambition. I love who I am when I'm with you. From somewhere behind them, Daniel could hear Lily trying and failing to stay quiet, her excited breathing audible even from her hiding spot. Victoria Langford, will you marry me? Yes. Victoria was nodding before he even finished asking. Yes, absolutely yes. Daniel stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, and then they were kissing while the sunset painted the world around them in impossible colors. From the bushes, Lily let out a whoop of joy and came running. You said yes! You really said yes! Victoria pulled Lily into the embrace, and the three of them stood there on the dock, holding each other as the sun disappeared below the horizon. Did I do good keeping the secret? Lily asked. You did excellent, Victoria assured her, kissing the top of her head. Best secret keeper ever. Does this mean you're going to be my stepmom? Victoria looked at Daniel, then back at Lily. If that's okay with you. It's very okay with me. Lily hugged Victoria tighter. I always wanted a stepmom who knows about dinosaurs and computers. They stayed on the dock until the stars came out, making plans and promises and soaking in the perfect peace of the moment. This was what happiness felt like, Daniel realized. Not the absence of problems or challenges, but the presence of people who chose to face them together. The rest of the vacation passed in a happy blur. They called family to share the news. Daniel's sister screaming so loud, he had to hold the phone away from his ear. Victoria's parents offering warm congratulations with just a hint of surprise that their workaholic daughter was actually settling down. They let Lily help plan the wedding, which resulted in increasingly elaborate dinosaur-themed suggestions that they gently redirected. On their last night at the lake house, after Lily was asleep, Daniel and Victoria sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket against the cool night air. Have you thought about timing? Victoria asked. For the wedding? I was thinking we could do something small this fall. Nothing fancy, just family and close friends. That sounds perfect. Victoria paused. Have you thought about what happens after, with living arrangements? Daniel had thought about it extensively. I think we sell both houses and buy something new together. Fresh start, space that belongs to all of us. You'd be willing to leave the neighborhood? The neighborhood was meant to be a fresh start after the divorce. Now I have an actual fresh start, with you. We can build something new. Victoria was quiet for a moment. I love you. You know that? I know. I love you too. No, I mean, she turned to face him fully. I love you for understanding that I need my career, but also for being worth compromising for. I turned down that board position because I wanted this more, and I don't regret it. I don't want you to have to choose between. I'm not choosing between. I'm choosing both, just in different proportions than I thought I would. Victoria smiled. The company is stable. I have good people in place. I can afford to be a little less available to work and a little more present here. That's not sacrifice. That's evolution. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the lake shimmer under the moonlight. Do you ever think about how different things could have been? Victoria asked. If I hadn't needed help with that box of books? If you hadn't been outside that day? Sometimes, but I don't think it was really about the books. Daniel pulled her closer. I think we would have found each other eventually. Some things are just meant to happen. You believe in fate now? I believe in showing up and doing the work. But yeah, maybe a little bit of fate too. They returned home from vacation to the reality of wedding planning and life logistics. True to his word, Daniel put both houses on the market, and they started looking for a new place that could accommodate all of them, including Victoria's home office and Daniel's workshop. They found it in late July, a 4-bedroom colonial with a yard big enough for Lily to play in and a detached garage that Daniel could convert into workspace. It needed work, but that was fine. They could build it into what they needed together. The wedding planning was surprisingly smooth, mainly because neither of them wanted anything elaborate. They settled on a small ceremony in September at a garden venue, immediate family and close friends only. Lily would be the flower girl, a role she took with utmost seriousness. "I have to practice walking slowly," she informed them one evening at dinner. "Flower girls can't run, even if they're excited." "Very true," Victoria said, keeping her face serious. "It's an important responsibility." "I know, that's why I'm practicing every day." Sarah's response to the engagement had been predictably cold. She'd sent a brief text congratulating them, but Daniel could read the anger underneath. When Lily mentioned the wedding during her next Seattle visit, Sarah's reaction was harsh enough that Lily came home upset. "She said you're replacing her," Lily reported tearfully. "That Victoria is trying to take her place." Daniel's anger at Sarah reached new heights, but he forced himself to stay calm for Lily's sake. "Nobody is replacing your mom, Lily Bean. Victoria is adding to our family, not taking anyone away." That's what I told her, but she didn't believe me. Victoria, who'd been listening from the doorway, came and sat beside Lily. "Sweetie, can I tell you something?" Lily nodded. "Your mom is always going to be your mom. That's a role nobody can take away from her, and I'm not trying to. What I'm trying to be is another person in your life who loves you and supports you." Victoria took Lily's hand. "Some kids have one mom. Some have two moms. Some have a mom and a stepmom. All of those are okay. You get to decide what you call me and how you think about me in your life. What if I want to call you Victoria instead of Mom? Then that's what you should call me. But what if sometimes I accidentally call you something else?" Victoria smiled. "Then that's okay too. There are no rules here, Lily. We're making this up as we go." The conversation seemed to ease something in Lily, but Daniel made yet another call to Sarah that evening. "You need to stop," he said flatly. "Stop making Lily feel guilty about being happy here. Stop acting like Victoria is some threat to your relationship with our daughter. Our daughter is being raised by another woman." "Our daughter is being raised by me," Daniel interrupted. "Victoria is a bonus, not a replacement. And if you can't see that, that's your issue to work through, not Lily's. I have every right to be concerned about who you're bringing into her life. You do. And if I thought Victoria was harmful to Lily in any way, I wouldn't have proposed. But she's not. She's good for both of us. And deep down, I think you know that." Sarah was silent for a long moment. "I just miss her," she said finally, and for the first time since the divorce, Daniel heard genuine emotion instead of manipulation in her voice. "I know you do. And Lily misses you too. But, Sarah, you have to let her be happy about the good things in her life, even if those things don't include you every day." "I don't know how to do that." "Figure it out, because Lily shouldn't have to hide her happiness to protect your feelings." The call ended on a tense note, but something had shifted. Sarah didn't apologize. She never apologized. But her next few calls with Lily were noticeably better. She asked about the wedding planning, listened to Lily's excitement without comment, even sent a gift for Lily to give to Victoria as a welcome to the family gesture. It wasn't perfect. It would probably never be perfect. But it was progress. September arrived with crisp air and leaves just beginning to turn. The wedding was scheduled for the third Saturday of the month, and as the date approached, Daniel found himself surprisingly calm. "You're not nervous?" Emma asked the night before, when she arrived to help with last-minute preparations. "About marrying Victoria?" "Not even a little." Daniel was arranging chairs in the garden, trying to follow the detailed diagram the wedding planner had provided. "About remembering my vows in front of people? Terrified." "You wrote them down, right?" "Yeah, but what if I forget to bring the paper, or I drop it, or—" "Daniel!" Emma put her hands on his shoulders. "Breathe. You're going to be fine, and even if you forget every word, Victoria knows you love her." "I do love her. So much it's kind of ridiculous." Emma hugged him. "I'm happy for you, little brother. Really happy." The wedding day dawned clear and perfect, the kind of September day that felt like a gift. Daniel stood at the altar, a simple arch decorated with flowers that Victoria had chosen, and watched as Lily made her way down the aisle with exaggerated slowness, scattering petals with the concentration of a surgeon. Then Victoria appeared, and Daniel forgot to breathe. She was beautiful. She was always beautiful, but today she was radiant. The dress was simple and elegant, her hair down in the way he loved, and she was smiling at him like he was the only person in the world. The ceremony was short and sweet, exactly what they'd wanted. When it came time for vows, Daniel pulled out his carefully written words and immediately forgot them completely, speaking instead from his heart. Victoria, you taught me that broken things can be fixed, and that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who makes you want to be better. You made me brave enough to try again. Thank you for choosing us. Victoria's vows were equally simple and profound. Daniel, you showed me that success isn't measured in quarterly reports or board meetings, but in morning coffee conversations and bedtime stories. You taught me that I could have the career I love and the family I need. Thank you for making space for all of me. When the officiant pronounced them married, Lily cheered so loudly that half the guests laughed. Daniel kissed his wife, while their daughter applauded and their families wiped away tears. The reception was held in the same garden with good food and better company. Daniel danced with Victoria, then with Lily, then watched as Victoria taught Lily how to properly box step. You're happy, Emma observed, finding him at the edge of the dance floor. I really am. Good. You deserve this. She clinked her glass against his. To second chances. To second chances, Daniel echoed. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Daniel found Victoria sitting on a bench near the garden edge, her shoes kicked off, looking at the stars. Hey, Mrs. Hayes, he said, settling beside her. I'm keeping my name professionally, she reminded him, but Mrs. Hayes has a nice ring to it for everything else. Fair enough. Daniel took her hand, running his thumb over her wedding ring. How are you feeling? Tired, happy, overwhelmed in the best way? Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder. We did it. We did. Lily looked so happy today. She is. She gets to have both of us now, officially. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the last of the guests say their goodbyes. In the distance, they could hear Lily laughing with Emma's kids, still going strong despite the late hour. I've been thinking about something, Victoria said. What's that? About what you said, that some things are meant to happen. She looked up at him. I don't know if I believe in fate exactly, but I believe we chose each other every day, and I believe that matters more than destiny ever could. Choosing each other, Daniel repeated. I like that better than fate anyway. Fate sounds passive. This was active. We worked for this. We did. Victoria kissed him softly. And we get to keep working for it, every day. The honeymoon was a quick weekend trip to a bed and breakfast a few hours away, all they could manage with Lily's school schedule and Victoria's work commitments. But it was perfect in its simplicity. 2 days of sleeping in and long conversations and building the foundation of their married life. When they returned, it was to their new house, still full of unpacked boxes, but already feeling like home. Lily had her own room, decorated exactly how she wanted it. Daniel had his workshop space, and Victoria had an office with enough room for the ever-growing pile of books she couldn't seem to stop ordering. Life settled into a new rhythm, one that felt sustainable in a way Daniel's previous existence never had. He had his work, Victoria had hers, and together they had Lily and a home and a future they were building piece by piece. There were still challenges, of course. Sarah remained difficult, though she'd softened enough to be civil at pickups and drop-offs. Victoria's work occasionally demanded more than they'd planned for, resulting in late nights and last-minute business trips. Daniel's business had growing pains as he tried to balance being present for his family and building his company. But they handled it together, with the communication and compromise they'd learned over months of relationship building. When Victoria had to fly to New York for an emergency board meeting, Daniel rearranged his schedule to cover. When Daniel had a massive rewiring job that required overtime, Victoria took over the bedtime routine and helped Lily with homework. It wasn't perfect. It was better than perfect. It was real. One evening in late October, Daniel came home from work to find Victoria and Lily in the kitchen, covered in flour and attempting what appeared to be homemade pasta. What's all this? He asked, surveying the chaos. We're making dinner, Lily announced proudly. Victoria said her grandmother used to make pasta from scratch, so we're trying it. How's it going? The first batch looked like worms, Lily reported. The second batch looks like flatworms, but Victoria says we're learning. Daniel looked at his wife, who shrugged with a flour-dusted smile. We're definitely learning something. Not sure it's pasta making skills. They ate the slightly misshapen pasta that night, and it was delicious in the way things made with love always are. After dinner, Lily went upstairs to read, and Daniel and Victoria tackled the mountain of dishes together. I got offered that board position again, Victoria said casually while scrubbing a pot. Daniel's hand stilled in the soapy water. The VC firm? Yeah, they said the offer stands if I want to reconsider. Do you want to reconsider? Victoria was quiet for a moment. A year ago, I would have said yes immediately. It's prestigious, influential, exactly the kind of thing I thought I needed to prove my worth. She set down the pot. But now, I already have what I need. The company is doing well. I have a family I love. I don't need to prove anything anymore. You're sure? I'm sure. Victoria turned to face him, leaning against the counter. Besides, Lily and I have plans to start a birdwatching journal. That's much more important than some board position. Daniel pulled her into a soapy hug. Have I mentioned lately that I love you? You might have mentioned it, but I don't mind hearing it again. I love you, Victoria Hayes Langford. I love you too, Daniel Hayes. As winter approached and the holidays loomed, they built new traditions as a blended family. Thanksgiving with both Daniel's and Victoria's families, Christmas Eve with elaborate cookie decorating sessions, New Year's with homemade pizza, and letting Lily stay up until midnight for the first time. Sarah spent Christmas with Lily in Seattle, and to everyone's surprise, it went smoothly. Lily came back with stories about snowboarding and hot chocolate, happy to have seen her mother, but equally happy to be home. I told Mommy about our traditions, Lily reported, and she said they sounded nice. It was a small thing, but it felt like progress. Like maybe, eventually, they could all find a way to coexist peacefully for Lily's sake. The new year brought new rhythms and small milestones. Lily turned 8 with another elaborate dinosaur party, though this time with a focus on marine reptiles. Victoria's company launched a new product line that was featured in tech magazines, bringing a wave of publicity that Victoria handled with characteristic grace. Daniel hired his first employee, a young electrician fresh out of trade school who reminded him of himself a decade ago. Life wasn't without its struggles. There were arguments about household chores and stress about money and the occasional crisis that required all hands on deck. But they faced each challenge together with the foundation of love and commitment they'd built so carefully. One evening in early spring, almost exactly a year after the wedding, Daniel found Victoria in their bedroom looking at something on her phone with an expression he couldn't quite read. Everything okay? She looked up, and he saw tears in her eyes. I'm pregnant. The words took a moment to register. You're... what? Pregnant. I took 3 tests to be sure. Victoria showed him the photo on her phone, 3 positive pregnancy tests lined up on the bathroom counter. I know we didn't plan this, and my career is at a critical point, and we probably should have talked about it more before. Daniel crossed the room and kissed her, cutting off the spiral of worry. When he pulled back, he was grinning. We're having a baby? We're having a baby, Victoria confirmed, starting to smile through her tears. Are you happy? I mean, I know Lily is still young, and adding a baby to the mix is complicated. I'm happy. I'm so happy I can barely think straight. Daniel put his hand on her still flat stomach. We're having a baby. They told Lily the next morning over breakfast, nervous about her reaction. But Lily's response was immediate and enthusiastic. I'm going to be a big sister? A real big sister? You are, Victoria confirmed. Will the baby like dinosaurs? Probably, with you as a big sister. Can I teach them everything I know? Absolutely. Lily considered this gravely. Okay, I approve of this baby. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Victoria's attempt to hide it at work became increasingly difficult as she started showing. Eventually, she made an announcement to the board, bracing for criticism about timing or commitment. Instead, they were supportive, even offering to extend her maternity leave beyond what was legally required. It wasn't perfect. There were still whispered concerns about whether she could handle both motherhood and running a company. But Victoria faced it with the same determination she'd brought to every other challenge. Daniel watched his wife navigate pregnancy while managing a tech company and step-parenting a precocious 8-year-old, and fell more in love with her every day. She was magnificent in her competence, graceful in her vulnerability, and absolutely terrified in a way that made her more human and lovable. The baby arrived in late October, a healthy boy they named James after Victoria's father. Lily was instantly smitten, carefully holding her baby brother and narrating everything she knew about being a human. "You're very small," she informed him seriously, "but that's normal for babies. Don't worry, you'll grow. And when you do, I'll teach you about dinosaurs and how to swim and how to beat Daddy at poker." "Please don't teach him to beat me at poker," Daniel said. "I've lost enough money to you already." Victoria, exhausted but radiant, watched the interaction with tears in her eyes. "We made this," she said to Daniel. "This whole beautiful family. We made it." "We did," Daniel agreed, wrapping his arms around his wife and watching their children, because Lily was theirs now, in all the ways that mattered. "We really did." The months that followed were chaos in the best possible way. Sleepless nights and diaper changes, Lily's helpful attempts to care for her brother that required more supervision than actual help, Victoria learning to pump between conference calls, Daniel juggling work, and midnight feedings. It was messy and exhausting and absolutely perfect. Sarah's reaction to the baby was complicated, but she handled it better than Daniel expected. She acknowledged James's existence, asked appropriate questions about his health, and even sent a gift when he was born. It wasn't warm, but it was civil, and that was more than Daniel had hoped for. Life settled into a new normal, one that included all of them: Daniel and Victoria, Lily and James, even Sarah in her reduced but important role. They were a family, unconventional in structure but solid in foundation. One evening in early December, with James finally asleep after hours of fussing and Lily in bed reading, Daniel and Victoria collapsed on the couch with the kind of exhaustion only new parents understood. "Remember when we thought life was complicated before the baby?" Victoria said, her head on Daniel's shoulder. "I remember thinking we were busy. We had no idea." "No idea," Victoria agreed. "Then, I love this chaos, though. I love our life." "Even the 3 a.m. feedings?" "Even those. Because they're ours." Victoria lifted her head to look at him. "Thank you for running after my car that day." Daniel laughed. "Thank you for coming back." "I'll always come back," Victoria said seriously. "That's the deal we made. We keep showing up, keep choosing each other, no matter how hard it gets." "Best deal I ever made," Daniel said, kissing her. They sat in the quiet of their living room, in the house they'd bought together, with their children asleep upstairs, and Daniel thought about how far they'd come. From two broken people trying to rebuild their lives separately to this, a family built on choice and commitment and the daily decision to love each other well. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been simple. But it had been worth every difficult moment, every hard conversation, every leap of faith. Outside, the first snow of the season began to fall, covering the neighborhood in white. But inside, in the warmth of the home they'd built together, Daniel Hayes and Victoria Langford were exactly where they were meant to be. Not because fate had decided it, but because they'd chosen it. Every single day they chose each other. And they always would.